Naruto, starting as a civilian ninja. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 101 Unexpected Visitor. After Yosuke left the Hatake family, Kakashi looked at Hatake Tsukumo and said, "Father, there are more ninjas coming to our house recently. And they are all people I didn't know before. How many people do you know, you little kid?" Hatake Tsukumo didn't pay much attention to Kakashi's question. Seeing this, Kakashi curled his lips and was very dissatisfied with Hatake Tsukumo for treating him like a child. Although he is indeed not very old, since he is already a ninja, how can he continue to be treated as an ordinary child? Kakashi didn't know that in the eyes of parents, even if a child grows up to 80 years old, he is still a child. How are you getting along with your new teammates? Hatake Tsukumo looked at Kakashi and continued, "Don't think that graduating at the age of 5 is a big deal. You have just started on the road of being a ninja. You must be humble and eager to learn, especially the team leaders, who have all come out of the mountains of corpses and seas of blood. If you can learn a little from their experience, it will benefit your ninja career infinitely." I know, my dear father, how many times have you said it? Are you annoying?" Kakashi shook his head impatiently, as if he couldn't stand Hatake Tsukumo's nagging, and ran away quickly. "By the way, father, I will go out to perform a mission tonight. Just tell you so." Kakashi's voice came from a distance. "I know, be careful," Hatake Tsukumo shouted to the distance. Then he smiled and shook his head, muttering to himself, "This kid." Time soon came to the evening. When Muen returned home from the hospital, he found that in addition to Kuramaki-an, Namake's Minato and Uzumaki Kushina also came together. "Moon, we too want to live here for a while, is that okay?" Minato said a little embarrassedly. Kushina pulled Kuramahuan's arm, looked at this side nervously, and didn't say anything. Seeing Moon's puzzled expression, Minato opened his mouth again to explain to Moon, and then Moon understood the reason. It turned out that the sealing technique that Uzumaki Mito set in Uzumaki Kushina's body to seal the nine-tailed fox must be combined with the Uzumaki clan's unique diamond seal to maximize the sealing effect. Kushina is not particularly proficient in the use of the diamond seal. Large emotional fluctuations, loss of consciousness, or even sleeping conditions may weaken the seal and give the nine-tailed fox an opportunity to take advantage. This requires Kushina to choose a place far away from the center of the village to live before she masters the diamond seal. Avoid the nine-tailed fox from causing serious damage to the village. Moon's house is located in the corner of the village, which is one of the most suitable places. In principle, I agree. Although my place is not big, it is not a problem for a few more people to live here. Muen said uncertainly, "But will the village agree to let you live here?" In this situation, the third generation must have made some arrangements. How could they agree to let you find a place by yourselves? Kushina said that the place the village found is too gloomy and unpopular. She doesn't like it. Minato looked at Kushina gently and said firmly. Kushina looked at Muen nervously. Although she didn't say anything, she obviously held Kuramahuan's arm tighter. Muen understood that gloomy and unpopular were just excuses made by Kushina. When ninjas were on missions outside, the environment was much worse than this. How could they care about this? This was Kushina expressing her dissatisfaction with the village, and it was also her test of the village. She was playing a little bit, and seeing how tolerant the village was of her. Minato expressed his support for her with practical actions. Seeing Minato's determined look, Moon smiled and said, "Since it's Kushina's request, then stay here. I believe the village won't have any objections." Hearing Moon's affirmative reply, Kushina almost jumped up with excitement and pulled Kuramahuan to chatter non-stop. Minato nodded to Moon, and Moon smiled in response. When Kushina and the others arrived at Moon's house, the Enbu ninja was reporting the situation here to the third Hokage. After listening to the report, the third Hokage rubbed his forehead and felt helpless. After thinking deeply for a while, he said to the Enbu ninja beside him, "Let him go. With the Konoha twin stars watching, there will be no problems in the short term. As long as they can hold on for a while, reinforcement will arrive." Their abilities are unquestionable, but Minato is okay. After all, he is Jiraiya's disciple, and has withstood the test in previous missions. The Enbu ninja said with some doubt, but what about Muen? This guy is a bit lawless. Is it really okay to let the Ninetales Jinchuriki live in his house? The third Hokage's mind flashed back to Tsunade's unflinching eyes when he looked at Tsunade in the first Hokage's mansion. He understood that Tsunade brought Muen to such an important occasion just to tell him that she absolutely trusted Muen and guaranteed Muen's loyalty. So, should he choose to believe Tsunade? The answer is yes. The third Hokage has no reason not to believe Tsunade. Since he has chosen to believe, he will not hesitate. The Sandai said with a firm expression. Although Moon acts a little recklessly, his loyalty to the village is not a problem. Yes. The Enbu ninja nodded his head in response. At the same time, he secretly admired the Sandai's magnanimity. Moon had offended this person, but now he had no intention of caring. Of course, although he believed in the loyalty of Minato and Moon, there would still be necessary surveillance and protection. The Enbu would not let the Nine-tailed Jinchuriki out of the village's sight. Moon saw Kushina, who was chatting happily with Kurama-kian, pulled Minato aside, and said, if the Nine-tailed really breaks out of the seal, even if it does not cause too much damage to the village, Kushina's situation in the village will still be very embarrassing in the future. Now, only a few senior officials in the village know that Kushina is the Nine-tailed Jinchuriki. Moreover, those who know about it have been given a gag order. Once the Nine-tails chakra leaks, Kushina's identity as the Nine-tails Jinchuriki will be made public, which is obviously very disadvantageous to Kushina. Is there any good way? Minato looked at Moon expectantly. It's not that he didn't understand this principle, but he just had no way. Once the Nine-tails show signs of breaking the seal, use the Flying Thunder God technique to take her out of the village to solve it, Moon said softly. Minato was shocked. It was not as simple as saying to take Kushina out of the village. Once discovered, she might be identified as a traitor to the village. However, Minato still looked at Moon firmly and said, what about the Anbu who are monitoring outside? Leave it to me, Moon said casually. Chapter 102 Kushina Riot. Huan, let's go out together. Muen waved to Kurama Huan, who was talking to Kushina, and said. Before Kurama Huan could reply, Kushina glared at Muen and said, Muen, what are you doing? You are not allowed to take Sister Huan away. I still have a lot to say to Sister Huan. Kurama Huan patted Kushina's shoulder and said with a smile, Kushina, I will talk to you later. Muen called me. There must be something important. Sister Huan, then you come back quickly. Kushina said reluctantly. Okay. Kurama Huan smiled and replied. Muen and Kurama Huan walked out hand in hand, and in Huan's mind, Muen's consciousness was communicating with Huan, which was the application of the spiritual mist. Muen told Kurama Huan the whole story of Kushina becoming the Nine-tailed Jinchuriki. This made Kurama Huan suddenly realize. She was confused by what Minato and Muen had just said about the Nine-tailed fox and the seal. No wonder the little girl was so nervous when she talked to me today, as if she was afraid that I would ignore her the next second. Kurama Huan said with a little pity in her tone. Tell me, how can we help them? Kurama Huan said straightforwardly. Then, Muen told Kurama Huan his plan. Kurama Huan's eyes shone with excitement, and he whispered, in other words, we should use illusions to confuse the two surveillance Anbu teams together now? Yes. Muen affirmed. Kurama Huan seemed to be more excited after receiving the affirmative reply. As Muen spent more time with Kurama Huan, he found that there were some adventurous factors hidden in Kurama Huan's character. She was very willing to do some unconventional things that could bring excitement. Things like using illusions to confuse the Anbu. She was very happy to try. With the improvement of Muen's strength, it is not easy for a general ninja to break free from Muen's illusion. The two Anbu teams responsible for monitoring Kushina have now been confused by Muen's illusion. What they see is what Muen wants them to see. In order to ensure that everything is foolproof, Muen now brings Kurama Huan, the master of illusion, to reinforce the illusion again. It is basically impossible for the two Anbu teams to break free from the illusion on their own. Kurama Huan, who had done something bad, ran back to the yard with excitement and seemed to be eager to chat with Kushina. It can be seen that Kushina seems very happy. When she just became a Jinkriki, she was actually the most sensitive and fragile in her heart. Chatting with Kurama Huan made her feel a lot more at ease. Muen made a gesture to Minato, and the two smiled at each other tacitly. Time soon came to late at night. Kurama Huan did not go home at Kushina's strong request, but stayed. At this time, he was sleeping with Kushina. Today's experience has exhausted Kushina's mind, and she has fallen into a deep sleep. Kurama Huan was not asleep. Looking at Kushina, who was holding her arm, her face was full of pity. At this moment, red chakra began to emerge from Kushina's body, shaking Kurama Huan away. Moon and Minato, who were resting with their eyes closed next door, opened their eyes first and rushed into the room. Moon put his hand on Minato, and Kurama Huan ran over and grabbed Moon's arm and refused to let go. She must follow. Minato put his hand on Kushina, and the Flying Thunder God technique was activated. The four of them had left the village. This is a valley, a secret place, where Minato often comes to practice. Under the moonlight, you can see that there are high mountains on both sides, and a small stream flows slowly in the middle. However, Moon, Minato, and Huan were not in the mood to enjoy the scenery at this time. They stared at the red glowing Uzumaki Kushina with nervous and serious expressions. At this time, we must find a way to wake up Kushina. The more the Ninetales chakra leaks, the more dangerous it is. If it is not stopped, it may cause irreversible consequences. Before the three of them made any move, Kushina over there had already attacked. Muen saw that in just this short period of time, there were already two chakra tails behind Kushina. Kushina, wake up quickly. Facing the attack of Kushina, Minato did not retreat, but rushed forward and tried to subdue Kushina. However, he was soon knocked away. It's not that Minato can't beat Kushina in the two-tail state, but that Minato wants to subdue Kushina without hurting Kushina, which is too difficult. Muen and Kurama Huan looked at each other, and together they cast illusions on Kushina, hoping to awaken Kushina's consciousness. However, Muen's illusion was soon broken by the extreme malice in the red chakra. Although Kurama Huan persisted for a longer time, he did not break through the defense of the red chakra, and did not touch Kushina's consciousness. In the end, he failed. The expected means did not work. The three of them were melancholy and did not know what to do. However, Kushina did not intend to stop attacking. The red chakra on her body became thicker and thicker, and her tails gradually changed from 2 to 3. Minato, it seems that the more tails behind Kushina, the stronger the attack power. Muen said to Minato, while dodging Kushina's attack. Minato did not answer Muen. But while dodging Kushina's attack, he kept calling Kushina's name, hoping that Kushina could hear it and wake up. Gradually, the fourth tail behind Kushina grew out. At this time, the form of Kushina surprised the three people. If we say that when the first three tails came out, Kushina was a humanoid wrapped in chakra, but after the fourth tail grew out, Kushina has begun to transform into the appearance of the nine tails. And the chakra coat that wrapped Kushina also changed from red to a thick black and red. Kushina saw that ordinary attacks had no effect on the three people, and suddenly crawled on the ground, and the chakra in her open mouth condensed frantically. After a moment, Kushina swallowed the condensed chakra in one gulp, and then spit it out violently from her mouth. Muen knew what kind of attack this was, when Kushina began to condense chakra. This is the tailed beast ball, and being hit by this thing is no joke. Be careful to avoid it. Muen quickly reminded the two. Although the three people narrowly avoided the attack of the tailed beast ball, they heard the strong explosion from the mountain wall behind them, and their backs felt cold, and they were scared. Chapter 103 Calming Down. Minato, we must make a decision. We can't let the tails behind Kushina continue to increase, otherwise Kushina may be hurt more. Seeing that the tails behind Kushina seemed to continue to increase, Muen said very seriously, Kushina's body can't bear such a huge chakra now. If the tails increase, his body will be crushed. Although Minato felt uncomfortable, he also knew that what Muen said was true, so he gritted his teeth and said, there is no other way, just attack directly. As he said, Minato dodged Kushina's attack and punched Kushina in the face, knocking her out, but this attack did not penetrate the defense of the chakra coat, and Minato's hand showed some signs of injury. And Kurama also took out the explosion blade flying foam from the ceiling scroll, and a large number of detonating tags flew towards Kushina, but Kushina dodged them all flexibly. Seeing this, Muen pulled Kurama back quickly. Kushina was already furious because of the attack of the detonating talisman and rushed towards Kurama. At this time, Minato on the side rushed up again, using his speed and agility advantage to hold Kushina back. Seeing this, Muen couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief and no longer held back. He quickly formed seals with his hands, and countless sword lights around him quickly formed into a platinum dragon around him. Minato! Muen shouted. The platinum dragon beside him had already attacked Kushina. Hearing Muen's shout, Minato broke away from Kushina in an instant. At this time, Kushina wanted to dodge, but it was too late, so she had to choose to resist Muen's attack. After Kushina took this move, although the chakra coat on her body was also damaged, it did not burst directly like the seven-tailed Jinchuriki at the beginning. Even though he held back a little, the power of the nine tails still surprised Muen. Although he did not completely destroy the tail beast coat, the effect of Muen's attack was still very good. This attack had obviously broken through the protection of the chakra coat and hit Kushina's body. Kushina's consciousness had begun to wake up. The chakra coat on Kushina had begun to slowly recover, but her expression was no longer as violent as before. She began to struggle, and her attack had stopped. Minato saw this change, and he was both distressed and excited. He shouted loudly, "Kushina, come on, Kushina, don't lose, wake up." Kurama couldn't help but shout at the side, "Kushina, come on, wake up quickly, I still have a lot to talk to you." Seeing that Muen didn't say anything, Kurama couldn't help but kick Muen and said, "Hurry up and say a few words to encourage Kushina." Kushina only felt a tingling pain in her body, and her consciousness woke up from her deep sleep. At this moment, Kushina only felt that there was an extremely strong resentment lingering in her mind. This resentment kept urging her to take revenge and go on a killing spree. Kushina didn't want to be such a person, but this resentment was too strong. Surrounded by resentment, she felt extremely lonely. She wanted to give up. She felt that, as long as she gave up resistance and integrated into this resentful thought, she would not have to suffer so much and would be able to get relief. Just as Kushina was about to give up, she vaguely heard Minato's encouraging shouts, Huan's voice, and it seemed that there was also Muen's voice. Yes, she was not alone. Although there were not many, she did have some friends who cared about her. She couldn't just fall down like this, and couldn't just give up like this. A bright light surged in Kushina's heart. She shouted disperse, and then her consciousness rushed out of the encirclement of resentment, and took back control of her body. She only felt that she was particularly powerful at this moment. Kushina, quickly retract the nine tails chakra. Your body cannot adapt to the current intensity. Moon, a medical ninja, saw Kushina wake up and seemed to be immersed in the power and quickly reminded her. Minato, who was standing by, saw that Kushina's eyes had regained clarity and rushed over immediately. Kushina looked at Minato, who came to her side quickly and said, "Minato, don't worry, I'm fine." "That's good, that's good." Minato responded with a silly smile. "Wait for me for a while." Kushina looked at Minato and closed her eyes after saying this. Kushina's consciousness came to the sealed space and saw the nine tails that were still sealed. Although she was still surprised by the nine tails' huge size and oppressive feeling, Kushina was no longer as scared as when she first saw it. She smiled and said, "Nine tails, your plan to make trouble while I was sleeping has failed. Little girl, don't be complacent, I still have many chances." The voice of Nine Tails echoed in the sealed space. She was not angry at all about the failure, and continued, "I can fail countless times, but I only need to succeed once." Kushina heard that Nine Tails' words made sense. She could only smile helplessly and said, "What you said makes sense. I really can't do anything about you." "Oh, you are not afraid at all, and you don't feel discouraged?" Nine Tails saw that Kushina didn't look afraid at all, but instead had some interest in Kushina, and asked puzzledly, Of course I'm afraid, but when I think of my lovers and friends who care about me, I'm full of courage. Kushina said happily. They will always stand by me and face any difficulties with me. After that, Kushina waved her hands, and a large number of golden chains surged from the void, instantly wrapping the Ninetales tightly, and the Ninetales did not put up too much resistance. Goodbye, Ninetales. Kushina's consciousness waved to the Ninetales and left the sealed space. When the golden chains wrapped around the Ninetales again, the black and red tail beast coat on Kushina's body suddenly dissipated. At this time, Kushina's body softened and was hugged by Minato with quick eyes and hands. Kushina woke up slowly and did not say much, but leaned on Minato's chest with peace of mind, feeling extremely safe and warm. Even though the scene was beautiful, Muen had to come over and said, "Let's get treatment first. It will be difficult if it's exposed tomorrow." After the battle, Muen and Kurama Huan were not seriously injured, but Kushina and Minato were seriously injured. Fortunately, Muen had mastered the power of Yangdun, and the minor injuries were easily healed. Chapter 104. You can try to make friends with the nine-tailed fox. The 4 people who returned to Muen's house from the valley were very tired, but none of them had the intention to rest immediately. The 4 of them sat together and reviewed the battle with Kushina just now, hoping to come up with some good ways to better deal with the sudden situation just now. Judging from the situation of Kushina's riot just now, the power of nine-tailed fox is stronger than everyone imagined. If we don't think of some countermeasures quickly and let it go, unimaginable consequences may happen if we are not careful. But the reality is helpless. In addition to injuring Kushina and letting Kushina's consciousness return, the 4 people couldn't think of a better way. I said I didn't want to sleep tonight, but you insisted that I have a good rest. Kushina pouted and said, "If you don't sleep tonight, you can also stay awake tomorrow night, but you can't stay awake every day, can you?" Kurama Huan said in a relaxed tone, "When you can't bear the urge to sleep anymore, it will probably be more difficult to wake you up then. Not resting, not sleeping, these are all crooked ways. Even if you can stick to it, there will be big problems with your body and mind." Muen also rejected Kushina's proposal, and then said, "In fact, there are 2 problems we have to solve." Muen paused and said, "The first is how to prevent the Ninetales from rioting again. The second is how to make Kushina wake up faster after the Ninetales chakra breaks through the seal. If you want to prevent the Ninetales from rioting again, you can only rely on Kushina to practice the diamond seal. As long as you practice to the point where you can still perform it instinctively, even when your body loses consciousness, you can ensure that the Ninetales seal is solid and reliable." Minato said helplessly at this time, "But this is not a simple matter. Even if Kushina has a good talent in this area, it will take a long time." At this time, Kurama Huan seemed to have thought of something and said excitedly, "I have an idea. If you want Kushina to wake up quickly from the out of control state, the stronger the mental power, the better. Muen, your spirit condensation technique is to strengthen mental power, right? Can't you teach it to Kushina?" Kurama Huan looked at Muen with sparkling eyes and said. Minato and Kushina, who were standing by, heard what Kurama Huan said and hurriedly wanted to refuse. The secret techniques of ninjas cannot be shared casually. Muen stopped Minato from speaking and said to Kurama Huan, "This is a secret technique compiled based on the bloodline of your Kurama family. It's fine as long as your Kurama family agrees. Why don't you just not tell my father? Besides, if we don't tell it, who would know?" Kurama Huan pouted and said, "Besides, the old guys in the family still don't know about the existence of this secret technique. I'm a bit of a hypocrite. It's a matter of life and death." Thinking about the reaction of the Kurama family at this time, it's indeed a bit over the top. Muen said embarrassedly, "Huan, take out the spirit condensation technique and give it to Minato and Kushina later. Muen, just teach it to Kushina. Since it involves the secret technique of the Kurama family, it would not be good for me to practice it again." Minato quickly refused. "Don't refuse, Minato. Don't you want to become a Hokage? This secret technique will be very helpful to you. Moreover, the difficulty of practicing this secret technique is not small. After you master it, you can also teach Kushina." Muen looked at Minato firmly, not allowing him to refuse. Feeling Muen's firm will, Minato did not refuse again, but thanked Muen again. At this time, Muen said again, we still have to think of a way to the first point. Kushina's practice of Vajra seal can indeed strengthen the seal, so that the Ninetales chakra can no longer break through the seal. But, there is actually another way. What way? Minato asked hurriedly, and Kushina also looked over curiously. Find a way to make the Ninetales unwilling to attack the seal, and stay inside the seal obediently. Muen continued, if you can do it, all problems will be solved. How is this possible? Kushina thought of the terrifying figure in the sealed space, and denied it at the first time. Nothing is impossible, Kushina. Muen looked at Kushina and said calmly, you will live with the Ninetales for the rest of your life. Do you want to always regard the Ninetales as your enemy and seal it in your body? Seeing Kushina lowered her head and fell into deep thought without speaking, Muen continued, if you don't want to be the enemy of the Ninetales for life, find a way to make friends with it, Kushina. Before long, Kushina had made a decision. She raised her head and looked directly at Muen and said, then what should I do? Minato and Kuramakian on the side also looked over with curiosity, wanting to hear what Muen had to say. I don't know what to do, Kushina. Muen shook his head and said, you have to figure it out yourself. Oh. Kushina was a little disappointed. Seeing Muen's promise, Kushina thought Muen had some solution. Minato and Kuramakian on the side also looked disappointed. However, I can provide some ideas. Seeing that everyone was looking at him expectantly, Muen continued, if you want to make friends with a stranger, what is the first thing to do? To make friends with strangers, of course you have to know their names first. Kushina said as a matter of course. That's it. Muen looked at the three people who were obviously confused and said, Kushina, do you know what the nine-tailed fox in your body is called? Shouldn't the nine-tailed fox be called nine-tailed fox? Kushina said as a matter of course again. Hearing this, Muen shook his head and said, the nine-tailed fox is just its appearance feature, which does not mean that its name is nine-tailed fox. If you want to make friends with the nine-tailed fox, start by figuring out its name, Kushina. Muen looked at Kushina and said, although the nine-tailed fox was sealed, it was already one with Kushina after all, and it knew everything about the outside world. When Muen talked about its name, the heart of the nine-tailed fox was obviously shaken, and the golden chains on its body clattered. After the four people finished their conversation, Moon and Minato walked out of the room and came to the courtyard. Moon looked up at the moon in the sky and said to Minato beside him, do you know why Lord Mito didn't seal the Ninetales completely, but left a gap? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 105, Alliance with the Nine-Tailed Fox. Why? Minato originally thought that it was because of Uzumaki Mito's old age and physical weakness. When he heard Muen ask this, he realized that there seemed to be another hidden reason. The nine-tailed fox is a very powerful force. This gap is prepared for Kushina to use the power of the nine-tailed fox smoothly in the future. Muen said calmly. When the four of them were together just now, Muen didn't say this because he was afraid that the nine-tailed fox would be even more angry after hearing this. The proud nine-tailed fox hates being calculated the most. Muen's words shocked Minato's heart. After thinking carefully, he felt that this seemed to be reasonable. For the village, the nine-tailed fox is so powerful that it is undoubtedly the best choice to find a way to turn it into the foundation of the village. Minato, teach Kushina the bone strengthening and bodybuilding technique as well. If you want to use the power of the nine-tailed fox, you absolutely cannot do it without a good body. This time Minato did not refuse and accepted Muen's kindness. The fact that the son of prophecy Uzumaki Naruto could become a perfect Jinchuriki is closely related to the fact that he inherited the perfect sage body of a six-path sage. The body of an ordinary person cannot withstand the chakra of the Ninetales. At this moment, Kuramakian rushed out and said to the two of them, Moon, the Ninetales wants to see you. Seeing the two of them looking confused, Kuramakian excitedly explained the reason. Kushina was a man of resolute character. even though she was still a little afraid of facing the Ninetales. Since she had decided to make friends with the Ninetales, she took the initiative to enter the sealed space as soon as the four of them finished communicating and asked the name of the Ninetales. What surprised Kushina was that this time the Ninetales was not angry, but seemed very calm. However, when Kushina began to communicate with it, a problem arose. No matter what Kushina said, the Ninetales remained silent and did not say a word. Just when Kushina was about to give up and prepare to come again next time, the nine-tailed fox spoke and put forward its own request, which was to meet Muen. Although she didn't know why the nine-tailed fox wanted to see Muen, it still made Kushina excited. Since the nine-tailed fox could also make requests, maybe it would be possible to become friends with the nine-tailed fox in the future. Muen and the other two quickly came to Kushina. Kushina, does the nine-tailed fox really want to meet Muen? Minato couldn't wait to speak. Yes, it said it wanted to meet the person who was first interested in its name, wasn't it Muen? Kushina said. Let's go see it together. Muen said as he put his hand on Minato's forehead and said, Minato, don't resist, let's go see the nine-tailed fox together. Minato's understanding of chakra has not yet reached its peak, and he still needs Muen's help to see the nine-tailed fox. Muen pulled Minato's consciousness and entered Uzumaki Kushina's body with Kuramaki Iron in the form of illusion. Seeing the huge and oppressive body of Ninetales for the first time, Kuramaki Iron and Minato were amazed. Muen didn't have time to sigh about these things. He looked at the Ninetales and said directly, I heard that you want to see me. I just want to know what kind of person wants to know my name. The voice of the Ninetales sounded in the sealed space. I won't tell others my name easily. Then how can you tell us? Muen asked curiously. I will only tell my name to people I recognize. Ninetales said loudly. Then how can I get your recognition? Kushina said hurriedly. That depends on your performance in the future, little girl of the Uzumaki family. The words of the Ninetales made Kushina stunned. She didn't know how to make the Ninetales recognize her, but Kushina still said proudly, then I will definitely work hard. Then can you please not attack the seal for the time being? Whatever you ask, Kushina and I will do our best to do it. Minato pleaded with the Ninetales. Me and Moon are the same. We will definitely do our best. Just give me your orders. Kuramaki Iron also quickly echoed. I want to destroy Konoha. Can you do it? I want freedom. Can you give it to me? The Ninetales said disdainfully. Hearing this, Kushina, Minato and Kuramaki Iron fell silent. What you said is naturally impossible with our current strength, and even if we are strong enough in the future, we will not do it. Muen looked at Nine-Tailed Fox and said, however, since we can't be friends for the time being, let's be allies first, okay? Ally? Nine-Tailed Fox asked with some doubt. Why should I form an alliance with you? The difference in strength between you and me is too great. And, what do I want to form an alliance for? Because we have a common enemy. Muen said affirmatively. Ha 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 ha, what enemies can I have? After the death of Hashirama and Uchiha Madara, is there anyone in this ninja world who is qualified to be called my enemy? Nine-Tailed Fox said arrogantly. Except for these two people, there is indeed no ninja in the ninja world who is qualified to be your enemy. Muen affirmed the words of Nine-Tailed Fox, and then said, however, are you so sure that Uchiha Madara is dead? Nine-Tailed Fox has always been brooding over being fooled by Madara with the Sharingan, and it is not an exaggeration to regard Madara as a mortal enemy. Nine-Tails was alert for a moment, staring at Muen, and said, boy, don't joke around. I was a participant in the final battle. No one knows better than me whether Madara is dead or not. Without any backup plan, do you think Madara will be able to fight the first generation so easily? Muen looked at Nine-Tails without flinching, stopped Minato and the other two who were hesitant to speak, and said, you should understand the power of the Sharingan better than anyone else. After hearing Muen's words, Nine-Tails fell into a brief silence, and then said, what evidence do you have? Muen didn't have any evidence at this time, but it was true that Madara was not dead, so Muen was particularly confident and said, I don't have any conclusive evidence, just some speculations. Hearing this, Nine-Tails pressed towards Muen with a violent momentum, staring at Muen with murderous eyes, and said, so, are you kidding me? Muen said calmly, I do suspect that Madara is not dead. The continuous conflicts in the ninja world are probably related to him. I guess that within 10 years at most, Madara will make the next move. For your almost endless lifespan, 10 years is nothing. After 10 years, if my guess is wrong, it won't be too late for you to retaliate against me. Chapter 106 Covenant. Deep in the consciousness of the nine-tailed fox, it has always had doubts about Madara's death. It has lived for a long time, and has a deep understanding of the ability of the Uchiha clan's Sharingan. It knows that Uchiha Madara is a rare genius even in the Uchiha clan, and it is impossible for him to fall so easily. However, its hatred and fear of Uchiha Madara made it happily accept and believe the fact that Uchiha Madara was dead, and suppressed its doubts in the deepest part of its heart. Most people are more willing to believe what they want to believe in their subconscious mind, and now the nine-tailed fox is also in this situation. However, after Muen broke through this window paper, the suspicion that existed deep in the nine-tailed fox's consciousness could no longer be suppressed, and he said, "Boy, do you have any other evidence?" Seeing this, Muen understood that the nine-tailed fox also had some doubts, and said, "I once captured a creature called White Zetsu, which has the dual characteristics of humans and plants, and is also related to the first generation Hokage Shirama. But I know that it is absolutely impossible to produce such a result as White Zetsu, based on the village's research on the first generation. And the only one who has the opportunity to obtain Hashirama cells and conduct in-depth research, apart from the Konoha ninja village, is the most likely Madara." After hearing Muen's description of the White Zetsu creature, the nine-tailed fox was shocked and fell into a brief silence. The White Zetsu creature was only vaguely heard by the old man Six Paths sage occasionally mentioned, and the memory had long been blurred. Unexpectedly, it appeared again now. The White Zetsu thing actually reappeared in the world. Something extraordinary must have happened in this world. Is it really Madara who is behind all this? Can Madara have such strength? The nine-tailed fox thought involuntarily. After Muen finished speaking, Nine-tailed fox looked at Muen and said, "Even if Madara is really still alive, why should I form an alliance with you? Because now we are the only ones who believe that Madara is still alive. We are your only allies, and because we are young and have unlimited potential, we will definitely defeat any enemy in the future, including Madara," Muen said decisively and confidently. The nine-tailed fox naturally sneered at Muen's confidence. In its long life, it has seen many such confident young men, but not many of them can survive. But the nine-tailed fox didn't mind giving these young men a chance. It didn't say anything more, but issued an order to expel several people, which was considered to be an agreement to the so-called covenant. In this way, the 4 people left the sealed space with their consciousness. What? In the end, you didn't say whether you agreed to the alliance or not. Kurama Huan muttered a little dissatisfied. No reply. It should be a default, Muen said. At this time, Muen saw Minato anxiously signaling, and knew that he had something to do, so he went out with him again. "Muen, are you lying to the Nine Tails?" Minato said anxiously. "This kind of thing can only be lied to for a while, not forever." Hearing this, Muen looked at Minato seriously and said seriously, "I'm not lying to the Nine Tails. I really suspect that Uchiha Madara is still alive. The possibility is very high." "What? But didn't Madara die at the hands of the first generation?" Minato was shocked and said in disbelief, "Is it fake death?" "So, Minato, it will not be easy for you to sit firmly in the position of Hokage in the future." Muen nodded and said with a little sarcasm, "The enemy may be stronger than you think." Facing Muen's ridicule, Minato also calmed down and said with a smile, "What are you afraid of? I still have your support." Just like that, Muen and Minato smiled at each other. Time quickly came to the next day. The Enbu ninja reported the situation of the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki to the Sandai early in the morning. That is to say, there was no movement last night, and it was quiet inside. The Sandai asked with some disbelief. "Yes, Lord Sandai." The Enbu ninja knelt on one knee, lowered his head and added, "Early this morning, 4 people came out of Moon's house, and there was nothing unusual. It seems that these guys are still very capable." The Sandai thought secretly. At this time, Kurama Huan had also returned home. "How can you live in Moon's house now, when you are not married yet? This is too unladylike," Kurama Huan said dissatisfiedly on the side. Okay, my dear mother. It was Minato and Kushina who had something to do last night, and I couldn't do anything about it. Kurama Huan rubbed Kurama Huan's shoulders, and then said, in the next few days, I have to stay at Moon's house to accompany Kushina. Why are Minato and Kushina staying at Moon's house? Kurama Huan said with some confusion. Are you lying to me? Okay, Huan is not a little girl who is confused. Would she lie to you for such a small matter? At this time, Kurama Yunkang on the side spoke up. Seeing this, Huan ran from behind Kurama Huan to Kurama Yunkang, pushed Kurama Yunkang to the study, and said to Kurama Huan with a smile, that's right. Mother, how could I bear to lie to you? After arriving at the study, Kurama Yunkang looked at Kurama Huan and said, speak, if there is anything, you have to go to the study to talk. Kurama Huan laughed and said nothing, but took out a scroll from his arms, and handed it to Kurama Yunkang. It was the scroll of the secret technique, that recorded the spirit condensation technique. Kurama Yunkang took the scroll with a puzzled look on his face, and opened it at Kurama Huan's urging to read it. This is. Kurama Yunkang looked at the scroll, his hands trembling, and he was so excited, that he couldn't speak. Although he hadn't tried the effect of the secret technique yet, through the description of the scroll, Kurama Yunkang already knew the significance of this secret technique to the Kurama family. If this secret technique was circulated in the Kurama family, the awakening of the Kurama bloodline would be much easier. This is a secret technique that can truly change the family's foundation. Coupled with the previous dream body refining technique, Kurama Yunkang seemed to see the rise of the family in the future. Seeing this, Kurama Huan laughed and said, this is a secret technique that Muen researched, based on the bloodline of our Kurama family. I have practiced it, and it is very helpful for the awakening of the bloodline of our Kurama family and the control of our abilities. It's just that the difficulty of practicing is a bit high. Is this really researched by that kid Muen? Kurama Yunkang still said in disbelief. Kurama Huan was a little dissatisfied with the way Kurama Yunkang addressed Muen. She pouted and said, who else could it be but Muen? Kurama Yunkang saw this, shook his head, laughed, and said, Huan, is Muen just going to pass this secret technique to our Kurama clan? Chapter 107, Minato and Kushina's gift. Yes. Kurama Huan said nonchalantly. Muen said that this originally came from Kurama's bloodline research, and now it is only right to return the research results to the Kurama family. Doesn't Muen have any requests? Kurama Yunkang asked in confusion. He didn't make any requests. Kurama Huan blinked and said cunningly. Muen said that he wanted to apologize to the Kurama family for passing on this secret technique to a few people. I told him that it doesn't matter. Anyway, the Kurama family doesn't know the existence of this secret technique. You can do whatever you want with the secret technique you researched yourself, and you don't need to care about the reaction of the Kurama family. Kurama Yunkang heard Kurama Huan's words, and felt a sense of laughter and tears. This girl was raised in vain. Her words were all good for Muen. It seemed that, if the Kurama family was dissatisfied with Muen's secret technique, it would be a great rebellion. This secret technique has indeed had a great impact on the Kurama family. People who have practiced this secret technique will definitely have a stronger resistance to illusions, which is not conducive to the development of the Kurama family's strength. But overall, the benefits to the Kurama family outweigh the disadvantages, because after the Kurama people practice this secret technique, the power of illusion will be greatly improved. Although Kurama Yunkang is only grateful to Muen at this time, and has no complaints, for some reason, seeing Kurama Huan's current appearance, he always feels uncomfortable. This is jealous of his own girl. There is nothing special about Muen's work in the hospital during the day, but the workload seems to have increased a lot without knowing it. From this point, it can be seen that the living environment of Konoha is getting worse and worse, and a big melee seems to be getting closer and closer. In the evening, Muen came to the residence of the first generation in black clothes to attend the funeral of Uzuma Kimito. Uzuma Kimito's funeral was not grand, and not many people came. Most of them were old people, and Muen didn't know them very well. Muen still felt a little guilty about Uzuma Kimito. Uzumaki Mito's application of the Ninetales chakra has reached a very high level, which can be seen from the fight between the two sides, when he suppressed the root with powerful chakra. But after all, Uzumaki Mito's body is not as perfect as Hashirama and Son of Prophecy Naruto's, and it is impossible to withstand the pressure of Ninetales chakra without injury. Although the Uzumaki clan also inherited some of the sage's physical constitution of the Six Paths sage. Therefore, that attack was even worse for Uzumaki Mito, who was already close to the end of her life, and accelerated her death. If it weren't for Muen, she would have lived longer. After a simple memorial service, Muen did not disturb Tsunade and Katoden, who were in grief, but went straight back home. When Muen returned home, he did not find Minato and Kushina, only Kurama Huan was busy in the kitchen. Just as Muen was about to help in the kitchen, he was driven out by Kurama Huan, saying, "I'm here, you go to the study. Minato and Kushina are waiting for you in the study." "Why are you waiting for me in the study?" Muen said with some confusion. "How should I know? The two of them have been busy in secret for the whole afternoon." Kushina smiled and said. Muen walked into the study with a little doubt, and saw Minato and Kushina sitting side by side. There were some scrolls in front of them, some of which were piled up, and another scroll was placed alone. The two seemed to have been waiting in the study for a long time. Muen looked at these scrolls and the serious expressions of Kushina and Minato in front of him, and said jokingly, "What are you two doing? Are you going to bribe me with the scrolls of secret techniques?" Hearing this, Kushina could no longer maintain the serious expression on her face, and exclaimed loudly, "Wow, Muen, how did you know? Minato and I haven't said anything yet. These are really scrolls of secret techniques." Muen said with some surprise. "Yeah." Kushina nodded hurriedly, pointing to the pile and said, "These are all the sealing techniques inherited by our Uzumaki clan. I was busy all afternoon, and took a lot of effort to copy them onto the scrolls." Then, Kushina pointed to the single scroll and said, "As for this one, it's even more powerful. Let Minato tell you." As she spoke, she poked Minato beside her with her elbow. Minato also smiled and said, "This is the Flying Thunder God technique I got from the village. Moon, these are the gifts from Minato and me to you. I believe these things will be very helpful to you." Kushina pointed to the pile of scrolls in front of her and said expectantly, "You just pass these things to me. Are you two kidding me?" Muen said in disbelief, "Let's not talk about the Uzumaki family's sealing technique. Flying Thunder God is a village's ninjutsu. You don't have the authority to teach it casually, Minato. Muen likes to study ninjutsu and secret techniques, but if Minato violates the village's rules in order to learn a ninjutsu, Muen still feels it is inappropriate. Don't worry, Muen. I have reported to the third generation today." Minato said seriously, "With your current status in the village, you are qualified to apply for this ninjutsu. How is this possible?" The third generation agreed to it? Muen still said in disbelief. Minato continued, "I agreed. The third generation said that the village was unfair in handling some issues. Sometimes he was helpless. I hope you can understand more." After listening to Minato's words, Muen already understood what the third generation meant. The final handling result of the root incident was unfair, no matter how you look at it. This is the compensation of the third generation to Muen. After hearing this, Muen didn't say anything more. It's better to have something good than nothing. What about the Uzumaki family's inheritance of the sealing technique? Muen looked at Kushina curiously and said, "This is a family inheritance, and you just gave it to me like this?" Kushina said a little sadly at this time. The Uzumaki family is now scattered all over the place, and it is unknown whether there will be many who will survive in the end. There is no Uzumaki family to speak of. Ninjutsu will only shine when it falls into the hands of those who need it. Muen, just accept it." Kushina swept away the loneliness just now and said seriously, "Muen, accept it. Didn't you also pass on the secret technique to us? The value of those two secret techniques is not low. If you don't accept it, Kushina and I will not feel at ease to practice your secret technique." Minato also said on the side. Seeing this, Muen no longer refused, and said with a smile, "I really like these scrolls. It's exactly what I need. Thank you, Minato, Kushina." Minato and Kushina laughed happily. "I will study tomorrow to see if I can write more." Tomorrow is the first day of July. I'm asking for monthly votes and recommendations. Thank you all my book friends. Chapter 108 Super Invincible Nine-Tailed Spiral Storm Jade. After the in-depth conversation with the Ninetales, the Ninetales has become unusually quiet. Even when Kushina fell into a deep sleep, not a trace of the Ninetales chakra leaked out. But this seems to be different from the imagined alliance. The Ninetales adopted an attitude of neither making trouble nor cooperating, as if it had turned itself into a bystander. One night half a month later, Muen sat cross-legged under a tree to practice with release, and Minato was gesturing something on the side. He did not make any seals, but the chakra on his palms was spinning and condensing wildly, as if he was practicing some kind of ninjutsu. Kushina and Kurama Kian were sitting together and chatting. They were no longer surprised by such scenes. They could see such scenes every night in the past few days. Kushina complained a little and said helplessly, I feel like I'm a fake nine-tailed Jinchuriki now. The nine-tail in my body doesn't want to break the seal, nor is it willing to help me, and it's unwilling to lend me even a little bit of power. If I hadn't been able to feel the presence of the nine-tail at any time, I would have thought that what happened some time ago was fake. Just be content, Kushina. Kurama Huan shook his head and said, it's good enough that it doesn't cause trouble. If you want to borrow the power of the Ninetail, you have to work harder. How to work hard? Do you want me to please it every day? I can't do that. Kushina scratched her head and said helplessly, you don't have to please it. Just take time to chat with it every day. One day, it will agree. At this time, Muen finished his practice, stood up from under the tree, and said with a smile, anyone who is locked in a small dark room is not afraid of darkness, but loneliness. Muen believes that the Ninetail will not be an exception. Hearing Muen's words, the Ninetail in the sealed space sneered. It was indeed afraid and hated Madara, but it also had no good impression of Konoha, and it was not willing to help either side. The best arrangement was for it to watch the two sides fight to the death. Or, you can make yourself stronger and forcibly take the chakra from the Ninetales. Muen said jokingly. Kushina's eyes lit up when she heard this, and she felt that this plan was more to her liking. When the Ninetales in the sealed space heard this, it instantly became furious, and the golden chains on its body rattled. Kushina seemed to sense the Ninetales' emotions, touched the seal on her lower abdomen, laughed, and said, the Ninetales finally reacted a little, and seemed to be angry. At this moment, Minato also stopped practicing and walked over. Seeing this, Kushina hurried over and asked with concern, Minato, how is the new ninjutsu going? Minato smiled slightly and said, it will be complete soon, but if you want to use it in actual combat, you need to practice more. What is the name of the new ninjutsu? Kushina said excitedly. Thinking of Minato, who was known as a genius in naming in the original comics, Muen was about to stop him, but it was obviously too late. After a little thought, Minato said, this is inspired by the tailed beast Jade of the Ninetales. It can be quickly performed without hand seals. Why not call it the Super Invincible Nine-Tailed Spiral Storm Jade? Hearing this, Muen had an expression of as expected, while Kurama Huan first had an incredible expression on his face, and then smiled secretly. Upon hearing this, Kushina's face was also full of black lines, and she immediately said loudly, okay, Minato. Will the new technique be called Rasengan from now on? I understand. Let's call it Rasengan. No, Kushina, it's called Super Invincible Nine-Tails Style Spiral Storm Ball. Minato couldn't help but get anxious and said quickly, yes, I know, Minato. The new technique is called Rasengan. I've heard it. After saying that, Kushina no longer paid attention to Minato's mumbling. The name Rasengan was decided. The main feature of Flying Thunder God technique is the word fast, combined with your invincible reaction speed, plus the almost formed unprinted ninjutsu Rasengan. You really want to use the speed to the extreme. Muen walked to Minato and said with some emotion, it's the Super Invincible Nine-Tailed Spiral Storm Ball. Minato said solemnly at first, then with a puzzled look, didn't you also practice the Flying Thunder God technique? You can be very fast too. Muen heard this and said helplessly, hey, Minato, you don't know yourself until now. Not everyone can do the same as you. After learning the Flying Thunder God technique, I can only use it to hurry on the road at best. Otherwise, if I run to the enemy with the flying thunder god technique and the enemy reacts faster than me, then I will be dead. After this period of practice, Muen can indeed perform the flying thunder god technique, but as he said, with his reaction speed, he can't adapt to the fast speed of the flying thunder god technique on the battlefield. Is that so? Minato pretended to be enlightened, and then said, but can you really practice the wood release in that way? It's a bit too incredible. Of course, do you want to try it too? Muen said with a bit of temptation. Forget it, I'm about to go on a mission, I don't have so much time to practice under a tree every day. Minato shook his head and said, so soon? Kushina on the side asked with some surprise and some loneliness. Yes, I'm about to go on a mission too. Kuramakian also echoed on the side. In the past few days, she and Minato, under the care of the third generation, the village did not assign any missions to the two. But after observing for a period of time, the village believed that Kushina's condition was stable and there was no danger, and the surrounding situation was tense, so they began to prepare to assign formal missions to the two. Why can you, Moon, stay in the village comfortably, while Minato and sister Kia need to go out to perform missions? It's not fair at all. Kushina said a little unconvinced. You are so strong, you should go out to perform many important missions. Because Moon is an excellent medical ninja, staying in the hospital can save more people. Kuramakian said with a smile on the side. Muen knew that Kushina didn't really have a problem with Muen, but was just angry and unhappy because she couldn't see Minato and Kuramakian for a long time. He was just an innocent person. Muen didn't care too much, just pretended to be innocent and said, hey, Kushina, don't use your firepower on me. Kushina pouted and didn't say anything more. Minato saw this and hurriedly pulled Kushina up with a smile and comforted her softly. Chapter 109 Tsunade and Kato Dan's decision. The next morning, after the four got up from Moon's house, they quietly finished their breakfast together. Everyone knew that after this breakfast, it would be unknown when the four would get together again. Minato and Kuramahuan would lead their respective teams to go out of the village to carry out their missions. Moon, I'll leave Kushina in the village to you. At the door of Moon's house, Minato took Kushina's hand and said to Moon, don't worry, Minato. Kushina will be fine in the village. Moon glanced at Kushina, who was obviously not in a good mood, and said to Minato, Huan, don't forget my instructions. Don't resist when you encounter danger, okay? Moon looked at Kuramahuan and said softly, yeah, I know. Huan raised her hand and said happily. Just like that, with mutual blessings, the four left. As soon as Moon arrived at the hospital, the nurse in the hall told him that Tsunade had already arrived at the hospital. Muen was very surprised. You know, Tsunade hasn't come to the hospital for a long time, especially since Uzumaki Mito passed away. Could there be something wrong? Muen thought to himself, and hurried to the dean's office. Muen is here, and I have something to tell you. Looking at Muen who came in a hurry, Tsunade said directly without waiting for Muen's breathing to stabilize, your master and I will be leaving the village for a while, and the hospital matters will be left to you in the future. Tsunade's words surprised Muen, and he asked quickly, Master's wife, what's going on? From the information seized in the laboratory of the root last time, Danzo and others are simply not capable of creating something like the White Zetsu. Tsunade looked solemn and said, that means the person behind the scenes may be outside the village. Your master and I are going to go out of the village to investigate. Master's wife, I have thought about this question too. However, no matter how I think about it, it seems that there is only one person who is capable of doing these things, that is Uchiha Madara. It seems that only he has the ability to get the cells of the first generation. Muen thought for a while after hearing this, and decided to remind him of the obscure things he knew. Tsunade was surprised when she heard this, and said seriously, I didn't expect you to think so much. If that's the case, then there's no need to hide it from you. You don't have to doubt it. Your master and I are now 80% sure that the person behind this is Uchiha Madara. Why? Is there any evidence? Didn't they say that Uchiha Madara died at the hands of the first generation? Muen asked in surprise. Although Muen knew that Uchiha Madara was indeed not dead, he still felt incredible that Tsunade and his wife could find evidence You should know that the second generation was a ninja with great research talent. He studied and invented many forbidden techniques and secret techniques throughout his life. Your good friend Minato's flying thunder god technique is one of his achievements. So for him, Madara's body is very important research material. Tsunade paused and then said, so, he secretly hid Madara's body at the time, preparing to do some research, but was eventually discovered and stopped by grandfather. After grandfather passed away, the second generation inherited the position of Hokage. Due to his busy schedule, he never dealt with Madara's body until his death. After grandmother passed away, we found the address where Madara's body was collected when we were sorting out her belongings. Tsunade frowned slightly and said solemnly, we already had doubts about Madara's life and death, so we went there in person, but did not find any trace of Madara's body. Your master and I seriously suspect that Madara was just faking his death in order to hide behind the scenes. Tsunade clenched her fists and said through gritted teeth, if this is true, then it means that Madara should be the final winner of the Battle of the Valley of the End. Grandfather and the others have been fooled. If this is true, it would be too dangerous for the two of you to go out and investigate. Muen said with a serious expression. Besides, what do people in the village say? Even if Madara's body is missing, it wouldn't be easy to make people believe that he is still alive. No matter how powerful Madara is, he is an old man now. Your master and I will not be able to fight him. Tsunade said confidently. As for the village, your master and I plan to hide it temporarily and wait until we find new clues. Will the third Hokage let you go? Muen showed a suspicious look and said, there are constant small battles around the village now, and the manpower is already short. If you leave, won't the village be even weaker? Just like the old man couldn't stop Jiraiya, he can't stop the two of us now. It just so happens that I'm very unhappy with how Danzo handled it, and it's also a reason to leave the village. Tsunade said nonchalantly. This made Muen feel distressed for the three generations. He had finally trained 3 disciples and thought that they could serve as a helping hand, but he never thought that none of the 3 people would be worry-free. Seeing this, Muen knew that Tsunade and his wife had made up their minds, so he stopped persuading them. After chatting for a while, they said goodbye and left. That night, Muen's home welcomed a guest, who was none other than Katodan. The two sat opposite each other, and Katodan spoke first. Muen, how are you going to deal with Kaientang? The wood release matter will be exposed one day. I haven't thought about it yet. If you don't leave, you can hold him back from graduating. Why don't you wait until he is 12 years old? Muen thought for a while and said, teacher, do you have any suggestions? Actually, it's very simple. You can hand Kaientang over to the third Hokage. Katodan looked at Muen and said seriously, just like Akimichi Naoki and Ito Hidega last time, become the third Hokage's direct Anbu. Seeing that Muen didn't speak, Katodan continued, don't doubt the third Hokage's strength. Once the third Hokage really asks to save someone, no one in Konoha dares to openly challenge him. Moreover, the third Hokage is the only one in Konoha who can save Kaientang. The most important thing is that handing Kaientang over to the third generation will allow the third generation to fully trust you and eliminate the grudge caused by the last unpleasantness. Katodan continued, last time, Tsunade took you to witness the transfer seal of the Nine Tails, which was to recommend your loyalty to the village to the third generation, but it is still not enough for the third generation to completely let go of his prejudice. Don't worry, master, I will think about it carefully. Well, that's good. Katodan heard this and did not persuade him anymore. He believed that Muen would consider the pros and cons of this. Instead, he said, the inheritance of ninjutsu in the secret room of my home has increased. Tsunade has put all the inheritance of wood release in it. After you successfully practice wood release, you can go and study it. Afterwards, the master and apprentice chatted for a while again, and Katodan left with satisfaction. It is unknown when we will meet again. Chapter 110. Konoha's wood release. The next morning, Muen went to Hiruna's house. After considering the pros and cons for a night, Muen decided to follow Katodan's advice and recommend Kaientang to the third generation. When Tsunade and Katodan were in the village, Muen, who was protected by someone, did not need to build a good relationship with the third generation. But when Tsunade and Katodan left the village, it became necessary to ease the relationship with the third generation and show loyalty. Moreover, there were a Kimichi Naoki and a Tohidego in the Anbu who could secretly take care of Kaientang, which was indeed a good place for Kaientang. Of course, Muen still had to ask for the opinions of Hiruna and his wife about recommending Kaientang to the Hokage, which was one of the reasons why Muen did not directly agree to Katodan at night. When Muen briefly explained the matter to Hiruna and his wife, the two were very happy and agreed without any hesitation. After all, in their opinion, being with the Hokage was indeed the best place to be a ninja. Afterwards, Muen said goodbye to Hiruna and his wife, and took Kaientang to the Hokage's office. "Brother Muen, what are we going to do?" Kaientang said in confusion. "I still have to go to school, I can't be late." "You don't have to go to school anymore, don't worry," Muen said calmly. Muen's words made Kaientang ecstatic, and he couldn't help but say, "Am I graduating like this? That's great. Whether you graduate or not, I won't care about it anymore." Then, Muen briefly told Kaientang about recommending him to the Hokage, which made Kaientang excited and nervous. The third generation was also very surprised by Muen's arrival. "You know, the boy in front of him is not easy to see." "Muen, how come you have time to see an old man like me?" The third generation said in confusion. "Don't you have to see Tsunade and Katodan off? They should leave the village today, right?" When talking about Tsunade and her husband leaving the village, the third generation seemed to have a bit of resentment in his tone. "I've already sent it off yesterday, so I won't go today. It will only add to the sadness." Muen smiled and said, "I came here specifically to find you this time, to recommend your talent." After that, he looked at Kaientang. Kaientang got a signal from Muen, and quickly formed seals with both hands, stretched out his right arm, and shouted softly, "Big forest technique." A large number of wooden sticks emerged from Kaientang's right arm and strangled forward. The power of ninjutsu is indeed not very great, but the significance of wood release is extraordinary for Konoha. Seeing this, the third generation stood up from the chair for the first time, walked quickly to Kaientang, and stared at him non-stop, which made Kaientang very nervous. When did he awaken? Is he also a member of the Senju clan? The third generation said with a serious expression. Yes, if the Senju clan had not been split up, Kaientang would also be a member of the Senju clan, and he had awakened the wood release for some time. Muen quickly explained. It was after Kaientang awakened the wood release that Tsunade-sama came up with the idea of understanding the living conditions of the Senju clan, and then the root thing happened. Muen drew a circle for all the things in front of the third generation, so as to prevent the third generation from randomly guessing the secrets in the future. The third generation looked at Muen deeply, shook his head, and chose to believe. The solution to the bloodline defect of the Kurama clan, the emergence of the new secret technique of the Inuzuka clan, and now the awakening of Kaientang's wood release, all things are closely centered on Muen. If you say that Muen has no secrets or special talents, the third generation will never believe it. But the third generation is different from Danzo. Danzo doesn't trust anyone, and just wants to keep Muen's secrets completely in his own hands, while the third generation thinks that, as long as Muen applies his secrets or special talents to the powerful Konoha, there is no need to get to the bottom of it. After all, who doesn't have a secret? Since you have been hiding for a while, why do you bring him here now? Sandai squinted his eyes, took a puff of cigarette, stared at Muen and said, "Because I can't hide it anymore. Seeing that the child is getting older and older, he will graduate and become a ninja soon. I can't stop using wood release in the future." Muen blinked and said directly, "Besides, after Tsunade-sama and Dan-sama left the village, I couldn't protect him. I had no choice but to come to you. You are quite self-aware." Sandai was also a little surprised at Muen's honesty, but it was Muen's frankness that made him have a more positive view of Muen. Sandai took another puff of cigarette, walked to the window, and looked at the scenery in the village outside the window. After a little thought, he said, "Then let him stay in the Anbu in the future. Staying with me, you and Tsunade can feel more at ease." "Yes." Muen nodded his head and agreed. Then, He said goodbye to Sunday and left. As for Sunday's specific work arrangements for Kaientang, it was not something Muen could know now. A few days later, at the underground headquarters of the Root, Orochimaru and Danzo in a wheelchair met again. Danzo looked at the busy Orochimaru and said, "Respected minister, you should know that there is another Senju clan member who has awakened the would-release bloodline in the village. Why, do you still want to target that child?" Orochimaru said with some disdain, "Don't think that you can do whatever you want, just because you have planted a few people in the Anbu. Those people may have been discovered by the old man, and are waiting for you to take action. Do you think I'm stupid, minister? Since he has come under the command of the third generation, it means that he has completely lost his chance. I will never underestimate the third generation." Danzo looked serious and continued, "But don't you want to understand the power of wood release?" "I'm not stupid, Danzo." Orochimaru looked at Danzo dangerously and said, "Do you think I will stroke the old man's tiger whiskers for such a small matter?" Danzo shook his head and explained quickly, "No, no, no, I'm not asking the minister to take advantage of that child. To understand wood release, you don't necessarily need that child. You should know that the Root has conducted in-depth research on wood release before. If the minister wants to learn more, he can check it out at any time." "Oh, weren't those things destroyed after the last incident?" Orochimaru showed an interested look and said, "Could it be that the destroyed ones were fake?" "Of course the destroyed ones were real, but if something that important is damaged, wouldn't the loss be too great? Therefore, the Root has backups of such important information." Danzo said as a matter of course, "I'll write more in the evening, but it should be quite late." Chapter 111 Extreme Rescue, Part 1. Under the temptation of Danzo, Orochimaru began to look at the research data of wood release and became deeply fascinated by the power of wood release. After handing Kaientang to the third generation, Muen started his life of going from one place to another. During the day, he was basically in the hospital. As the most skilled doctor in Konoha Hospital, he basically checked the critically injured in the hospital every day. He was also responsible for receiving the injured ninjas who were constantly retreating from the front line. Sometimes, when the situation was urgent, they had to stay in the hospital even at night. After finishing his work in the hospital, Muen would enter his own research time. The practice of wood release was carried out step by step. According to Muen's estimate, it would take at least 2 to 3 years. In terms of understanding the sealing technique, Muen made great progress in a few days. Originally, Muen had done some research on the sealing technique. After receiving the inheritance of the sealing technique from the Uzumaki clan, Muen's understanding of the sealing technique was even better every day. In particular, the Shiki seal gave Muen a deeper understanding of the study of spirits. For him now, it has become easier to extract the spirits of living beings from the body, and the secret technique Spirit Hands has gradually become a trend of great success. In the road of combining Yang-gun to improve the bone strengthening and body fitness technique, Muen is also making steady progress. According to the progress, if nothing unexpected happens, Muen can perfect the bone strengthening and body fitness technique within a year. This is Muen's top priority now, because it is something that can enhance the foundation of ninjas. In such a tense work and life, Muen didn't seem to feel the passage of time. He only knew that Kurama Huan came back and left again, and it had happened 3 times. It has been almost 10 days since Kurama Huan left the village last time. On this day, Muen had just finished inspecting the critically injured ninja and was about to take a rest. Suddenly, Muen frowned instantly, as if he had noticed something, and he had disappeared in the stunned eyes of the doctor and the injured ninja. But Muen had already used the Flying Thunder God technique. After Muen mastered the Flying Thunder God technique, the first thing he thought of was how to modify this technique to suit his own use. It would definitely not be possible to directly fight the enemy like Minato did, and Muen's fighting talent did not allow him to do so. After a period of hard thinking, Muen did make a slight change to the Flying Thunder God technique. It is well known that, in order to launch the Flying Thunder God technique, it is necessary to leave a chakra mark of the Flying Thunder God technique at the target location. Muen can leave a small amount of chakra carrying his consciousness on the mark, which is usually in a sealed dormant state. Once stimulated, this small amount of chakra will dissipate like a shadow clone, and at the same time, this consciousness will return to Muen's mind. Because it is usually in a dormant state, the stream of consciousness will not accumulate, and the return flow will not have much impact on Muen. But Muen can discover the condition of the mark carrier. At this time, the mark that Muen left on Kurama Huan was triggered by Kurama Huan, proving that Kurama Huan was in danger at this time. Muen went to rescue with the Flying Thunder God technique. This is the meaning of Flying Thunder God to Muen, not to defeat the enemy, but to protect relatives and friends. The 4 members of Kurama Huan's team, except Kurama Huan, are all ninjas who have just graduated not long ago, and their identities and strengths are not bad. The oldest is Inuzuka Tsume, who is now 13 years old. She is the sister of Inuzuka Shida, and is considered to be the most likely person in the Inuzuka clan to master the ultimate secret technique besides Inuzuka Shida. Hizureto, now 9 years old, is good at using a black blade katana with a highly poisonous blade, and has excellent assassination ability. Uchiha Inahina, who is the same age as Hizureto, is a ninja of the Uchiha family who joined Kurama Huan's team after the root incident. Needless to say, his ability is naturally not much to say. Although he has not yet opened his eyes, his fire escape ability is extremely outstanding. This time, the Kurama Huan team was carrying out a one-way escort mission to escort a caravan to the Lander Fields. There were no unexpected situations during the mission, but on the way back, when they arrived near the border between Konoha and the Lander Fields, they were ambushed by enemy ninjas. Kurama Huan's team was not careless on the way back after completing the mission, especially Inuzuka Tsume, who had good reconnaissance ability, did not relax at all. The ancient ninja dog Kuromaru used his sensitive sense of smell to detect the surrounding movements. Suddenly, Kuromaru barked uncomfortably, and at this time Kuromaru was still unable to speak. However, the 4 people who had many common missions knew immediately that the enemy was found nearby. Defend against the enemy. Kurama Huan was heroic at this time, and shouted, and had already taken the explosive knife Fimo in his hand, and said, "Don't leave me too far, we should get out of trouble first, and kill the enemy as a supplement." Then, the enemy came like a tide. Kurama Huan was originally the most gifted person of Kurama family in this generation. Under Muen's guidance, he successfully practiced the spirit condensation technique. His illusions were already controlled by his heart. Most of the ninjas who came to attack had already fallen down before they arrived in front of Kurama Huan's team. These ninjas suddenly appeared in a forest. When they were still feeling strange, a fire suddenly broke out in the forest and surrounded them. "Everyone hold on, we will be fine. This is just an illusion," a ninja screamed while being burned. At this moment, the clouds in the sky of this space transformed into the appearance of Kurama Huan, and said to the ninjas in the sea of fire below mischievously, "Come on, guess. If you are burned to death in the illusion, can you still survive in reality?" Which, you wait until the illusion is lifted, and you leave the illusion space. I will make you look good," a ninja shouted loudly. Then, the voices cursing which kept coming from the sea of fire below. The girl floating in the sky just grumbled helplessly, "It's boring. There is no one who can fight in this illusion space." Of course, it's not that there is no one who can fight, but those who can fight are not so easy to fall into Kurama Kian's illusion. Outside the illusion space, the enemy still rushed up. Kurama Kian used the explosive blade flying bubble with great vigor, while also taking into account the situation of the other 3 team members. The detonating tags on the explosive blade flying bubble can fly out to support the 3 at any time when they are in danger. It can be seen that among the 3 team members, the oldest Inuzuka Tsume is the strongest. He cooperates well with Kuromaru and performs various secret techniques of the Inuzuka clan very well. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 112 Extreme Rescue, Part 2. Bing Zuli Tong has the strongest sense of cooperation. He walks around in Rizukatsume, checking for loopholes in his defense, and at the same time, he does not miss any opportunity to kill the enemy. The poison on the black blade sword will kill anyone who touches it. Uchiha Inahiro, who was born in a famous family, is the weakest among the three. On the one hand, his Sharingan has not been opened, and the ability of the Uchiha clan cannot be fully demonstrated. On the other hand, he came to this team the latest, and as a member of a famous family, he is too arrogant, and usually disdains to cooperate with his teammates. At this time, the cooperation between him and his teammates is a little unfamiliar, and he can't keep up with the rhythm of his teammates. Therefore, he is a little out of the team in the battle, and he seems to be the weakest. The enemy also saw the weakness of Uchiha Inahiro's team, and immediately shifted the focus of the attack to Uchiha Inahiro. This was also keenly captured by Kurama Huan. She slightly shifted her attention to Uchiha Inahiro, and made supporting Uchiha Inahiro a priority. All of this was seen by Uchiha Inahiro, who was not lacking in battlefield wisdom. For the arrogant Uchiha Inahiro, this was a spiritual humiliation. When had the Uchiha clan ever become the weakest link on the battlefield? Uchiha Inahiro was furious, but he could do nothing about it. After all, strength cannot be developed in one day, unless he can open his eyes now, and achieve a qualitative leap. In this way, the two sides seemed to be in a stalemate, and it seemed that no one could do anything to the other. At this moment, a dark-skinned ninja came running from a distance, with blue lightning all over his body, which seemed to be some kind of ninjutsu. The man who came was the son of the current 3rd generation Hokage, and it was very likely that he would be the 4th generation Hokage in the future. AI's arrival completely changed the situation on the battlefield. His speed was too fast and his strength was too strong. The first target was Kurama Kian. Although Kurama Huan has greatly improved her physical skills, after practicing Dream Body Refining Technique and Bone Strengthening Technique, both Dream Body Refining Technique and Bone Strengthening Technique are secret techniques to make up for and strengthen the body's foundation, rather than techniques to increase the strength of the body. Therefore, Kurama Huan was knocked out by AI, who came rushing over with one punch. At this moment, Kurama Huan knew that this was definitely not a ninja she could resist. She remembered Muen's appearance in her mind, decisively triggered the mark left by Muen on her body, and then fainted. From AI's running to Kurama Huan being knocked out, it was a matter of a moment. Inozuka Claw, Bingzuli Tang and Uchiha Daohuo didn't even have time to be terrified, and it seemed that they could only watch AI kill Kurama Huan. At this moment, Muen came to Kurama Huan through the Flying Thunder God technique, and hugged Kurama Huan to narrowly avoid AI's fatal blow. Muen looked at the image of the ninja in front of him, frowned, and said, "The son of the 3rd Hokage, AI. Oh, so you know me. Judging from the ninjutsu just now, it was the Flying Thunder God technique, right? Are you the Minato Namikaze?" The blue lightning on AI's body did not dissipate, and he seemed to be ready to attack at any time. At this time, he said in confusion, "No, I heard that Minato Namikaze has blonde hair, which is different from your black hair." At this time, the two warring parties had stopped and stood on both sides. Obviously, Muen's side was a little thin. "I'm not Minato." Muen shook his head and said, "My name is Muen. Well, I've heard of you, the Konoha twin stars who are as famous as Minato Namikaze." AI nodded and said, "Then killing you will definitely make Konoha feel sad." Looking at Kurama Huan, who fainted in his arms, Muen said expressionlessly, "Although I don't know why the son of the 3rd generation of Hokage would ambush Huan here, but now these are no longer important. You want to kill me, and I want to kill you too. You and I will rely on our own abilities." As he said, Muen handed Kurama Huan in his arms to Inuzuka Tsuma behind him, and the sword attribute chakra condensed in his hand, and a physical longsword shining with platinum light appeared. As early as the beginning of the conversation between Muen and AI, Muen's spiritual mist had already been deployed. At this time, Muen knew AI's actions very well. However, Muen did not dare to be careless. This person could compete with Minato in speed with his lightning style ninjutsu. His combat consciousness and reaction speed were definitely not comparable to Muen's. In order to concentrate more, Muen held a long sword emitting platinum light, and closed his eyes. To deal with such an opponent, Muen had only one way to go: strike back. Seeing Nguyen close his eyes, AI said in a deep voice, "This is the first time someone dares to close his eyes when fighting me. With the blessing of the spiritual mist, Nguyen's vision requirements are not high. Closing his eyes can make him more focused." Nguyen did not answer AI's words, but made a battle preparation. This was a provocation to him and AI's eyes. "Okay," AI shouted angrily and rushed up. Nguyen concentrated all his attention. Facing AI's attack, he could only dodge it with a spiritual mist and had no time to counterattack. In this way, the two sides went through several rounds, all in the same pattern. AI attacked, and Nguyen dodged in a panic. Nguyen was very dissatisfied with himself, because this was the first time he faced an enemy and couldn't even fight back. But what Nguyen didn't know was how shocked everyone in Union was by his continuous avoidance of AI's punches. Before this, no one had ever been able to do what Nguyen did, and those who could avoid a punch were rare. AI was also very surprised and paused his attack, looked at Nguyen, and said, as expected of the Konoha twin stars, "You are indeed quite capable, but you have stopped here. I will not stop until I defeat you after this attack. Next time I have a chance, I will go and see the style of another twin stars." After that, AI attacked again. Fortunately, AI had just stopped attacking, so Nguyen had already had a counterattack in his mind. When AI attacked this time, Nguyen did not dodge again in a panic, but retreated in the direction of AI's attack, while avoiding the vital parts. At the same time, he condensed a large amount of healing chakra in the attacked part. Nguyen's purpose was to ensure that he could survive this blow, exchanging injuries for injuries. Afterwards, Nguyen focused all his attention on the chakra longsword in his hand. When AI's attack focused on Nguyen, Nguyen took advantage of the situation and pointed his longsword at AI's subordinates. Nguyen didn't even have time to aim at the attack part, just for fear that, if he hesitated for a moment, the opportunity to attack would be missed. In this way, both sides flew backwards, but both were injured. This is the first time that Nguyen failed to cut the enemy in two when using Yindun to bless sword done. I wrote 10,000 words today, and I would like to ask book friends who have votes to encourage me. I will accept monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. Thank you all. Chapter 113. Ambush in the Clouds. Although they were somewhat surprised that Nguyen could still fight back under AI's lightning chakra mode, the people in Union were not too worried. They did not think that Nguyen's attack could hurt AI. The defense of the strongest lightning chakra mode was not something that could be easily broken by ordinary attacks. Unfortunately, Nguyen's sword chakra mode was not an ordinary attack either, especially with the blessing of yin chakra mode. It seemed to be able to break through anything. When AI stood up tremblingly, the oblique wound from his left shoulder to his right waist was instantly exposed to the people in Union. Looking at the huge wound that almost cut AI in half and the spurting blood, the people in Union reacted in shock and rushed forward. Some people stood between AI and Nguyen, and some people surrounded AI in the middle to protect him. Nguyen was not doing well at this time, and was seriously injured. Although he barely avoided the heart, and reduced some of the impact by retreating, yin healing and destroying was indeed a very useful medical ninjutsu, but AI's attack was too fast and too heavy. Although Nguyen could still stand, his fighting power was definitely seriously damaged. Get out of the way. I didn't lose. That guy must be more seriously injured than me. Let me finish him off first. Just as Nguyen was thinking about how to get out of trouble, AI on the opposite side angrily pushed away the cloud ninja in front of him and roared loudly. Seeing this, Nguyen's mind suddenly tightened, and he began to concentrate and be alert secretly. But at this moment, AI, who had just been talking big, fell to the ground with a bang, and the cloud ninja was in chaos. It turned out that AI's injuries were not light to begin with. Being able to stand up was already the limit. At this time, he struggled and roared like this, and the wound suddenly split deeper, and he had completely lost the ability to move. It was under such circumstances that both sides remained on guard, while tacitly starting to disengage. The Cloud Ninja wanted to leave the battlefield as soon as possible to treat AI's injuries. After all, AI's identity was special and could not be lost. After some evaluation, Nguyen also thought that he was not sure of keeping AI completely, and if any unexpected incident happened again, it might put the people behind him in danger. When the people from Kumogakure left their sight, a trace of blood flowed from the corner of Nguyen's mouth again, and his tense mind relaxed a little. Nguyen did not dare to delay for a moment, turned around, picked up Kurama Huan from Inozukatsume, and said to the other three, "Put your hands on me." Inozukatsume and the other three also came back to their senses from the tense confrontation, and after hearing Nguyen's order, they did not dare to neglect it, and hurriedly did it. Seeing that everyone was ready, Nguyen immediately used the Flying Thunder God technique to bring everyone back to Konoha Hospital smoothly. Nguyen returned to Konoha safely, but the other side of the battle, the Kumogakure ninja, was not so lucky. After the Kumogakure ninja broke contact with Nguyen and others, the medical ninja in the team immediately treated AI's injuries. How is it? Seeing that the medical ninja had finished the treatment, the leader of the ninja with light yellow short hair asked hurriedly. The medical ninja shook his head and said, "The wound is too long and too deep. For the time being, we can only stop the bleeding. We still have to go back to the village for treatment. Otherwise, it may be life-threatening." Upon hearing this, the leader ninja did not dare to slack off and immediately led everyone to the land of lightning. The leader ninja's name was Boyka. He thought that following AI out this time should be a relatively easy task. The task progressed smoothly at the beginning, although the ambush target was strong and caused them some trouble. When AI made a move, he thought the overall situation should be decided. Who knew that the situation would take a sharp turn for the worse afterwards? Nguyen, one of the Konoha twin stars, suddenly appeared on the battlefield and seriously injured AI in the direct battle, which shocked him. You know, AI is the future of Kumogakure. If there is any accident, it will be an unbearable loss for the entire Kumogakure. He decisively led everyone out of the battlefield. For Kumogakure, the most important thing now is AI. Under the leadership of Boyka, the Cloud Hidden Ninjas did not dare to slack off along the way. They carefully concealed their tracks and tried their best to avoid unnecessary troubles and delay AI's treatment. But even so, an accident still happened. When the Cloud Hidden Ninjas were walking in a river valley, a large number of ninjas suddenly rushed out from all around, and the number was more than 5 times this, as if they had been waiting for them here for a long time. Fate is so wonderful. The Cloud Hidden Ninjas, who were still besieging Konoha an hour ago, were besieged by enemy ninjas several times their number the next moment. The battle happened so abruptly. The ninjas who attacked the Cloud Hidden Ninjas came from the Rock Hidden Ninjas. Most of them were proficient in Earth Escape ninjutsu, cooperated tacitly, had strong tenacity, strong defense, and had a fearless temperament in battle. The Cloud Hidden Ninjas were good at lightning escape ninjutsu, and were extremely good at combining ninjutsu with physical skills and swordsmanship, and had strong attack power. The two sides were like natural enemies, and the battle was already white hot at the beginning. Since the Kumogakure ninjas needed to devote some of their energy to guarding the seriously injured AI, and they were at an absolute disadvantage in numbers, the Kumogakure ninjas had to fight and retreat under the leadership of their leader, trying their best to hold on. Everyone hold on. Only by holding on can we have hope. Boyka encouraged his comrades while trying to maintain the defensive formation. But even so, the Kumogakure ninjas still fell beside Boyka one by one. Just when the Kumogakure ninja formation collapsed and was about to fall into a desperate situation, a boy about 10 years old suddenly fell from the sky. This boy was AI's partner, the Eight-Tails Jinchuriki Killer Bee. After Killer Bee appeared, the Iwagakure ninjas braved the huge gap in strength and still attacked fearlessly for a while. Seeing that they could not do anything to Killer Bee, the Iwagakure ninjas retreated unwillingly. At this time, there were only 3 people left in the Kumogakure ninjas, including Boyka, except for the unconscious AI and Killer Bee who had just arrived. Even these 3 people were already covered in wounds. Kirabi, it's a good thing you're here, otherwise it would be really bad. Boyka looked at Kirabi and said with a bleak smile. Kirabi, who likes hip hop rap, was not in the mood to sing at this time. Looking at AI who was almost dying, he said coldly, "Who did it?" Looking at Kirabi who exuded a terrifying aura, Boyka swallowed unconsciously and said, "Muai, Moon. Muai, Moon. How dare you hurt my brother like this? Sooner or later, I will settle this grudge with you." Kirby said secretly in his heart. Chapter 114 The Secret in the Dark. After returning to the hospital, Muen ignored his own injuries and immediately began to treat Kuramakian. Fortunately, although Kuramakian had multiple fractures all over his body, they were not fatal injuries, and his coma was mainly caused by the powerful thunder attribute damage in AI's attack. He only needed to patiently recuperate for a period of time to recover his health, which also made Muen feel relieved. The time between Muen's disappearance from the hospital and his return to the hospital with Kuramakian's team was not long. Ordinary ninjas did not have much understanding of the meaning of this, but the top leaders of Konoha clearly understood that another ninja who had mastered the Flying Thunder God technique had appeared in Konoha. In the Hokage's office, after listening to the report from the Anbu, the Sandaime smiled unconsciously. He waved his hand to let the Anbu ninja retreat, walked to the window, looked at the village outside, and said to himself, "You've mastered it so quickly, you really have a good talent. Twin stars of Konoha, continue to grow, so that I can rest assured that the future of the village is in your hands." In a dark place, Danzo was sitting in a wheelchair. His jealousy towards Muen made his expression ferocious. He gritted his teeth and said, "Hirozen, why do you want to pass on such an important ninjutsu so casually? It was a mistake for the second Hokage to choose you as Hokage. Konoha will be destroyed in your hands sooner or later. Only I can set things right and lead Konoha to prosperity. Just wait, this day will not be too far away." The fire in Danzo's heart has never been extinguished. A few days later, Hatake Tsukumo, who was on a mission outside, also received relevant information. He remembered the platinum dragon flying over Konoha that day, smiled slightly, and thought, after the sword-style bloodline, is it the Flying Thunder God technique? I wonder how far you can grow. I'm really looking forward to it. In the land of lightning, on a towering mountain, there is always fog and mist, and deafening thunder echoes from time to time. The Hidden Cloud Village is located here. The Hidden Cloud Village, where the Raikage is located. The Raikage was furious at this time, and he asked the Anbu ninja beside him, "Why did I ambush a Konoha female ninja for no reason? Is there anything special about this ninja? Why did AI act alone? Why didn't she go with Killer Bee? Why did she encounter an ambush from my Wagakure?" Lord Raikage, AI thought that he alone was enough to ambush a Konoha team, so he didn't inform Killer Bee. After Killer Bee reacted, he quickly went to support them. The Anbu ninja lowered his head and replied, and judging from the scale of the Iwagakure participating in the ambush, Iwagakure seemed to know AI's route in advance, and waited for AI there. I suspect that the village's intelligence was leaked. As for why AI ambushed this Konoha ninja, you can only ask about it in person after AI wakes up. The ninja continued. How is AI's injury now? After hearing the statement of the Anbu, the third Raikage's anger subsided a little, and he asked with concern. The situation has stabilized. The medical department said there shouldn't be any impact. He just lost too much blood, and hasn't woken up yet, said the Anbu ninja. Upon hearing this, the third Raikage was obviously relieved. He frowned and thought, there have been several suspected intelligence leaks in the village. There have been no problems after several investigations. Further investigation will only cause panic among the people. It's not right to investigate now, and it's not right not to investigate. It's really a headache. Who is this guy who leaked the information? There's no need to investigate the intelligence for now. Just be more careful in the future. The third Raikage thought for a while, and made a decision. Then, with a fierce look in his eyes, he said, however, the hatred of Konoha and Iwagakure cannot be ignored. Send down the order to strengthen the intelligence collection of these two villages. As long as we find an opportunity, we must give them a thundering blow. In the land of Earth, the Iwagakure village, surrounded by high mountains and rocks, is famous for its solid defense. The high mountains and rocks not only block the attacks of external enemies, but also hinder the communication between the village and the outside world. At this time, in that Tsuchikage's office, that Tsuchikage looked at the intelligence in his hand, shook his head and thought, the intelligence is actually true. If we send some stronger forces over, can we get rid of the next generation of Raikage candidates? The third Tsuchikage, Anoki, shook his head, knowing that the opportunity had been missed, and it was useless to think about it anymore. He said to the Anbu ninja beside him, "Where did this information come from in the first place?" "Search Sachikage. It was reported by a genin." The Anbu ninja said with some confusion, "But now this genin has disappeared." The third Sachikage was stunned when he heard this and said, "Are you sure it is a ninja from our village? Could it be an imposter from another village?" "He is a ninja from our village. Many people know him." The Enbu ninja also said with some confusion, "After receiving this information, we monitored him. We didn't expect that he disappeared under our surveillance." After listening to the statement of the Anbu ninja, the third Sachikage Inoki thought secretly, is it not only passing on information, but also hiding the identity? It's hard to say who is behind it. Could it be Konoha? Only they want us to go to war with Kumogakure and both sides will suffer. When the third Raikage was worried about the village's intelligence leak and the third Sachikage was puzzled about the source of the intelligence, the real mastermind behind all this was hiding in the underground of the mountain cemetery. In the dim underground space, the hideous outer path demon statue stood tall, and branches stretched out from the demon statue to connect to the white Zetsu. One of the largest branches was connected to Uchiha Madara, who was falling into a deep sleep. A black shadow, that could not be covered even in the dim underground, came to Madara and said, "Madara, our plan failed. The plan to induce Kumogakure to kill Kuramakian and Iwagakure to kill AI has failed. Oh, Kuramakian's strength should not be so strong that he can escape the killing of the next generation of Raikage." Madara said with some doubt. Muen took action. He used the Flying Thunder God technique and seriously injured AI. Black Zetsu said calmly. Madara was also quite surprised when he heard this and said, "Tobirama's technique? That's not surprising. I wanted to provoke his hatred for Kumogakure, but now Kumogakure hates him, which is also good, as long as it can make the ninja world more and more chaotic. The same is true for the Iwagakure ambush on AI. It doesn't matter whether it succeeds or not. As long as Iwagakure makes arrangements according to the intelligence, our goal will be achieved." Madara continued, "My current strength is enough to protect myself, but not enough to make progress. I must clear some obstacles for my successor. The strength of the 5 major ninja villages is still too strong. That's all for today. Suddenly my mind is a mess and I can't write anymore. Sorry, everyone." Chapter 115, Post-War Harvest, Part 1. In a single room in Konoha Hospital, Kurama Huan has been recuperating in this room since she was rescued by Muen. At this time, Kushina was chatting with Kurama Huan. "Sister Huan, you don't know that when Muen brought you back that day, his face was gloomy, which scared the doctors and nurses in the hospital. Afterwards, he ignored his own injuries and everyone's dissuasion and insisted on treating your injuries personally." Kushina lay in front of the bed, supporting her chin with both hands, and vividly described the scene a few days ago to Huan on the bed, as if she was there. "Now all the female ninjas in Konoha envy you. They are so envious. They all say that you are lucky to have a good boyfriend who is good at medicine, strong, and considerate. Those who are not married even dream of snatching your boyfriend." Kushina said with a little resentment. "Really, they don't even look at their own conditions. Can they compare with you, Sister Huan? Are they as beautiful as you, as virtuous as you, as strong as you? They can only dream about it." Kurama Huan sat on the hospital bed, and she didn't look injured at all. She touched the little girl's red hair and said shyly, "Kushina, Muen is really excellent. I'm not as good as you say. It is really lucky to find Muen. With the proficiency in the Yangdan, Muen's level of medical ninjutsu has obviously risen. Under Muen's careful care, Kurama Huan's injuries have been completely recovered within 2 days. Of course, if we don't consider the subsequent impact at all, with Muen's ability, it would be easy to discharge Kuramakian from the hospital on the same day. For example, Muen himself started to work normally the next day. Of course, everyone in the hospital thought that Muen insisted on working with injuries because he couldn't let go of so many injured and sick patients in the hospital. This gave Muen the labels of kindness and dedication. Now, the reason why Kuramakian is still staying in the hospital is mainly due to Muen's request. On the one hand, he didn't want to fully expose his abilities, and on the other hand, he wanted Kuramakian to take the opportunity to rest more. As for Kushina, she came to the hospital on the day Kurama Kian was injured, and no one knew where she got the news from. In the next few days, she basically came to the hospital every day to accompany Kurama Kian for a long time, even longer than Kurama Kian's mother Kurama Huang. Kurama Huan's answer made Kushina curl her lips and said with a smile, "I admit that Muen is very good, but I think she is still a little bit too good for you, Sister Huan. I'm indeed not very good, at least I'm far behind Minato." At this time, Muen walked in from the door and said jokingly. Muen's sudden words scared Kushina and made her face red. "Dean Muen, don't you need to knock on the door when you enter the patient's room? You have no manners at all." Kushina is indeed not an ordinary person. Her face quickly changed from blushing to angry red. She put her hands on her hips and questioned Muen. "I knocked on the door, but maybe some people were too engrossed in the conversation and didn't hear it." Muen answered calmly. Kushina, who knew that she was a little wrong, didn't say anything more, but stamped her feet, snorted lightly, turned her head to the side, and no longer looked at Muen. In this way, she expressed her protest. Kurama Huan, who was sitting on the hospital bed, watched all this with a smile on her face, and said comfortingly, "Okay, Kushina. Muen didn't mean any harm, he was just joking, don't take it too seriously." Kushina heard this and said, "Sister Huan, you must teach Muen a good lesson in the future, don't be so rude." Yes, sister knows." Kurama Huan echoed. Of course, Muen would not really get angry with Kushina, a girl who was less than 16 years old. Moreover, as they got to know each other more, he knew Kushina's character very well. There was no malice, and no bad intentions. At this time, Kurama Huan's mother, Kurama Huang, also knocked on the door and walked in. "Mother, why are you here too?" Kurama Huan asked hurriedly. "Auntie." Muen and Kushina also greeted her hurriedly. Kurama Huang ignored Kurama Huan, but looked at Muen kindly and said with a smile, "Muen, when are you going to get married?" No, it's Huan. When can she be discharged from the hospital?" Muen was stunned at first, then reacted and said quickly, "Auntie, Huan has recovered and can be discharged today." "Really? Getting married today?" "No, can she be discharged today?" Kurama Huang said with surprise. "Won't it be too soon?" "No, auntie. You have to believe in my medical skills. There must be no problem." Muen replied respectfully. Muen found that communicating with Kurama Huang seemed to be more difficult than fighting with AI. Fortunately, Kurama Huan's father and brother had already left the village to perform tasks, otherwise, I really don't know how to deal with it. Listening to the chat between Muen and Kurama Huan showed a look of despair on the side, and a few black lines seemed to fall on his face, while Kushina pursed her lips and gloated secretly. After a while, Muen, who couldn't stand it any longer, hurriedly left on the pretext that there were still things to do in the hospital. Afterwards, out of dissatisfaction with Kurama Huan, who had completed the discharge procedures, ignored Kurama Huang's resentful eyes, and refused to follow Kurama Huang home, but wandered around the village with Kushina. In the evening, Kurama Huang came to Muen's house as usual, but what was different from the past was that there was a little tail behind her, Uzumaki Kushina. According to Kushina, she was afraid that Muen would bully Kurama Huan, so she came to protect Kurama Huan. After completing the daily wood release practice, Muen made seals with both hands, and a faint blue lightning flashed on his body, and he ran wildly in the small yard. The operation mode of AI's ninjutsu lightning release chakra mode was originally invisible under Muen's spiritual mist. Therefore, on the night after returning to the village, Muen had already summarized and copied down the practice method of lightning release chakra mode. Of course, Muen also tried to practice it, and found that it was good to practice it to improve physical activity and strength, but that was all. To use it in combat, it was still a little bit lacking for Muen, and it felt a bit tasteless, and it didn't fit Muen's combat style at all. Chapter 116, Post-War Harvest, Part 2. In order to fully demonstrate the violent power of the lightning chakra mode, it is necessary to completely transform the chakra of the whole body into the lightning attribute in the battle, and concentrate all efforts to operate the mode. This also determines that using this technique to fight must be the simplest and most direct hard hitting. And Muen prefers to flexibly choose the fighting method according to the different enemies in the battle. It may be preemptive with the spiritual mist, or it may be strong to use the sword escape, and more often use the spiritual mist for post control. In addition, the hard-hitting fighting method requires extremely strong fighting talent, which is obviously lacking in Muen. Muen will not do such a stupid thing of attacking the enemy's strength with his own shortcomings. However, getting such a powerful ninjutsu can only be used for daily physical exercise, and cannot get more benefits from it. Muen finds it unacceptable, no matter how he thinks about it. So the unwilling Muen conducted extremely detailed research on the ninjutsu, but he didn't expect that Muen really found a place that was useful to him. Under the lightning chakra mode, the strength, intensity, and activity of the ninja's body will be greatly improved, which is known to Muen. However, after careful research, Muen found that under the thunder chakra mode, the reaction speed of nerves has also been greatly improved, which aroused Muen's strong interest. You know, Muen's nerve reaction speed has always been Muen's weakness. If Muen's reaction could be faster in the battle with AI, he would not have been unable to find a chance to counterattack under the blessing of the spiritual mist. In the end, he could only rely on the method of exchanging injuries for injuries, to end up with a lose-lose situation. As Muen's research deepened, Muen found that under the thunder chakra mode, the current used to stimulate nerves, especially brain nerves, was extremely small, which means that only a small amount of chakra is needed to achieve the purpose of improving reaction speed. This discovery greatly encouraged Muen. So, with the reference of the thunder chakra mode, the thunder chakra mode that focuses on improving nerve reaction speed appeared in Muen's hands, and Muen named it thunder stimulation technique. Kurama Huan and Kushina were somewhat surprised to find that Muen, who was running wildly in the courtyard, had no significant difference in speed compared to before, but his turning and avoiding when encountering obstacles was obviously smoother and more beautiful. The two did not understand the reason, but Muen knew that this situation meant that his reaction speed had indeed improved greatly, and the research on Thunderbolt technique had been successful. Of course, even under the stimulation of electric current, Muen's nerve reaction speed could never reach the level of genius in an instant. Otherwise, how could AI, who was already talented, lose to Minato in speed under the Thunderbolt chakra mode? Before using the Thunderbolt technique, Muen's nerve reaction speed was ranked in the middle and lower among many ninjas. After using the Thunderbolt technique, Muen's nerve reaction speed could be ranked in the middle and upper, which was already a qualitative change. And Muen believed that with the daily practice of the Thunderbolt chakra mode, the nerve reaction speed could be slightly improved. Next, the only test for Muen is how to use other ninjutsu as desired under the operation of thunder technique. This is a test of Muen's control of chakra and understanding of ninjutsu, and aren't these Muen's strengths? Muen believes that, as long as he practices hard, it will be a short time to apply thunder technique to his combat system. Muen, who is quite satisfied with the effect of the new technique, looks at Kurama Huan and Kushina who are chatting happily, walks over and says, "What are you talking about? You are so happy." To be honest, Muen can't understand the topics that seem to never end between the girls. It was like this in the previous life, and it is also like this after coming to the ninja world. Humph. What do you care what we are talking about? Don't you still need to practice? Go and practice quickly. Kushina seemed very dissatisfied with Muen's interruption and snorted coldly. Seeing Muen, who was confused by the retort, Kurama Huan smiled and said, "Kushina is talking about how she manipulated the Ninetales and made the Ninetales agree to share its chakra with her." Hearing this, Muen looked at Kushina's proud face and didn't bother to argue with her. He asked with interest, "Oh, what's going on? The Ninetales compromised so easily?" As Kurama Huan and Kushina explained, Muen gradually understood. It turned out that Kushina followed Muen's advice and would take a long time every day to sink her consciousness into the sealed space and chat with the Ninetales. Of course, the Ninetales still maintained its aloofness as always. No matter what Kushina said, it just looked like it didn't care. Kushina couldn't go out of the village, and she didn't have anything to do. Kurama Huan and Minato were on missions and were no longer in the village. Muen, who was in the village, didn't want to pay much attention to her. In this way, what Kushina lacked the least was time. Even though the nine-tailed fox ignored her, she would still chat with the nine-tailed fox about everything, rain or shine. But after Kurama-Kian was injured and returned to the village last time, Kushina was worried about Kurama-Kian and went to the hospital to visit Kurama-Kian every day. For a while, Kushina just forgot about the nine-tailed fox who ignored her. The first day was fine, and the nine-tailed fox did not move. On the second and third days, there was still no movement. On the fourth and fifth days, Kushina could clearly feel the restlessness of the nine-tailed fox in the sealed space, and each time it became stronger. It was not until the sixth day that Kushina's consciousness entered the sealed space again. "Little girl, why didn't you come to chat with me these days?" The nine-tailed fox saw Kushina and questioned. "You don't care about me, why should I come here? Besides, there is no benefit in chatting with you every day." Kushina no longer had much expectation of impressing nine-tailed fox, and no longer had the fear of nine-tailed fox at the beginning, so she said casually. Nine-tailed fox fell silent for a while after hearing this, and then said, "As long as you come to chat with me every day in the future, I promise to lend you my power." Kushina was stunned by the sudden happiness, and after a while she said excitedly, You, are you telling the truth? Of course, when have I ever lied?" Nine-tailed fox said with some pride. In this way, Kushina inexplicably reached a new agreement with nine-tailed fox. Chapter 117, A Brief Test of the Power of the Nine-Tailed Fox, Part 1. Kushina couldn't figure out the reason, but Muen had some understanding. If Kushina had never communicated with the nine-tailed fox, and the two sides had always been at peace, and had never interacted with each other, then until the end of time, the nine-tailed fox would not compromise at all. It was because Kushina had been persistently chatting with the nine-tailed fox for a period of time that the nine-tailed fox gradually got used to this noisy scene, even though the nine-tailed fox had never responded. Once the habit was formed, if the nine-tailed fox returned to its previous lonely state, it would seem particularly uncomfortable. This was also the reason why the nine-tailed fox became extremely anxious after Kushina had not seen the nine-tailed fox for several days in a row. In addition, sharing power with Kushina was just a trivial matter for the nine-tailed fox. Between continuing to adapt to loneliness and sharing power, the nine-tailed fox decisively chose to share power. That's all. Kushina, have you ever tried to use the chakra of the nine tails? Muen looked at Kushina with a proud face and asked curiously. No, what if I lose control when I try it alone and cause damage to the village? Kushina's pride faded, and she looked a little regretful. Then she looked at Muen with hope and said, Muen, how about you use the flying thunder god technique to take me out of the village so that I can try it to my heart's content? Muen, just agree to Kushina, I want to see it too. Kurama-Huan on the side also said excitedly. Muen thought for a while, shook his head and said, no need to leave the village. Before he finished speaking, Kushina was like an eggplant hit by frost. The light in her eyes dimmed, and she became listless, muttering, sure enough, Muen is a bastard. Kurama-Huan on the side also pretended to be unhappy, pouting and blinking at Muen. Seeing this, Muen didn't bother with the two of them. He shook his head and chuckled, saying, what I mean is, just try it here. There's no need to leave the village. Really? Kushina's eyes brightened instantly, and then hesitantly said, but this is not good. What if something really goes wrong? Kurama-Huan on the side also nodded in agreement. With Huan and I here, nothing will go wrong. Muen replied seriously, besides, there is no need to hide the fact that you can freely use the power of the nine-tailed fox from the village. When you can really master the power of the nine-tailed fox perfectly, maybe the village will agree to let you go out. Really? Muen only felt that Kushina's eyes sparkled instantly. Kushina was full of fighting spirit and said excitedly, then let's try it now. Kurama-Huan on the side saw the smile from the heart on Kushina's face, and a happy smile appeared on her face. Hey, don't be so excited. This is just my guess. After all, when you can perfectly use the power of the nine tails, there will be only a handful of people in the ninja world who can threaten you. Muen looked at the two excited people and said with a headache, besides, you think it's too easy to perfectly use the power of the nine tails. This is a super difficult thing. Maybe, Kushina, you will never reach this level in your life. It's okay, Muen. I always thought that I would never be able to leave Konoha village again. Now I know there is still a glimmer of hope. I will never give up no matter what. Kushina said with a firm look. You can do it, Kushina. Kurama Huan encouraged from the side. Muen, I, and Minato will always be with you. That's good, then we will start trying right away. Muen said seriously, but before that, Kushina, you must obey my orders. When I say stop, you must stop resolutely, and can't immerse yourself in the powerful power of the Nine Tails. Okay, Muen, don't worry. Kushina nodded and said seriously. After that, Kushina began to communicate with the Nine Tails, and slowly released the power of the Nine Tails. A red chakra began to gather around Kushina, and a strong sense of oppression began to appear around Kushina. At this moment, 4 masked Anbu ninjas came to the courtyard of Moon's house in an instant, and stood in 4 directions, staring at Kushina in the center. Is she trying to control this power? An Anbu ninja wearing a bird-shaped mask said with some surprise. No one answered the Anbu ninja's question. Moon and Kurama Huan focused all their attention on Kushina. Kushina, how is it? Kurama Huan asked nervously. I feel very relaxed. Kushina blinked, looked at Moon, and asked with a smile. Moon, can I continue? Yes. Moon nodded and said. Hearing this, Kushina began to release the Nine-Tails chakra again, and slowly the red chakra was worn on Kushina like clothes, and there was a tail formed by red chakra behind her. At this time, the 4 Anbu ninjas looked at each other, and retreated far enough away. Muen saw that Kushina's eyes were clear, and she cast a questioning look at her. Without waiting for her to speak, he continued, continue. With Muen's permission, Kushina slowly released chakra again, and the second tail began to form behind Kushina, but Kushina was still not affected. The 4 Anbu ninjas could no longer bear the pressure. The 4 of them quickly formed seals at the 4 corners, and a square barrier slowly rose, covering Kushina, Kurama Huan and Muen within the barrier. Muen frowned slightly, but did not say much, just continued to say to Kushina, continue. As soon as the voice fell, the red chakra became stronger and stronger, and the third tail also formed behind Kushina. The 4 Anbu team maintaining the barrier were sweating on their foreheads at this time, and they were very nervous. With this kind of chakra strength, the barrier of the 4 of them could not trap them for long. Muen closed his eyes, sensed for a while, and said to Kushina, okay, Kushina, you can stop. Hearing this, the Anbu people couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. What they were most afraid of now was that Muen would say the word continue again. Muen, I feel super powerful now. Kushina was a little confused and dissatisfied and said, besides, I'm also very sober now. I think I can continue. Okay, Kushina. You promise to be obedient. Muen frowned and said seriously. Chapter 118, A Brief Test of the Power of the Nine-Tailed Fox, Part 2. Kushina felt the chakra of the Nine-Tails surging through her body, and deeply felt the power of this force. For a moment, she had an illusion that she could do anything with this power. At the same time, Kushina felt that Moon was making a fuss. She felt that she had not reached her limit yet, and her body and mind could still bear it. She wanted to further release this power and experience a stronger feeling. Kurama Huan looked at Kushina, who was intoxicated with power and didn't want to pay much attention to Moon. Thinking of the powerful destructive power of Kushina that night, she shouted anxiously, Kushina, think about Minato. Don't be confused by the power of the Nine-Tails, and don't be too anxious to master the power of the Nine-Tails. Kushina was stunned when she heard this, and the figure of Minato appeared in her mind. Thinking of Minato's gentleness, her heart was startled, and she woke up from the desire to pursue powerful power. Kushina was afraid, and stopped trying to release the power of the Nine-Tails. She looked at Muen with some embarrassment and said, I'm sorry, Muen, it seems that I'm still affected by this power. Muen was relieved when he heard this. If Kushina really didn't obey, Muen would definitely not hesitate at all, and would subdue her at the first time. It doesn't matter. It's good that you can wake up from your desire. Muen looked at Kushina and said, this is almost the limit of your use of the Nine-Tails chakra at this stage. When you are fully familiar with and control this power, you can start to go further. Kushina nodded hurriedly to the side to show her agreement. At this time, Nguyen suddenly found that the barrier that surrounded them was slowly dissipating. Nguyen looked over in confusion, but found that it was the Sandai who brought another Anbu team to the periphery of the barrier. It turned out that the movement here was too loud, and the Sandai thought that the Ninetales was finally going to riot, so he rushed over with the Anbu team. As soon as the barrier dissipated, the Sandai arrived beside Nguyen and the other two in an instant. He was amazed at Kushina, who was still conscious and wearing a red chakra coat with 3 tails. The Sandai was a little bit unbelievable that Kushina could master the power of the Ninetales to such an extent in such a short time. This was far beyond his expectations. However, since Kushina became the Jinkriki, the development of things has always been beyond the village's expectations. Fortunately, the development of things has been positive. In the case of the unstable seal, there was no loss of control, which was enough to surprise the Sandai. Now, she has quietly begun to practice controlling the power of the Ninetales, and has achieved certain results, which makes the Sandai even more overjoyed. The 3rd generation ignored the greetings of the 3 people, and happily circled around Kushina twice, nodded slightly, and said, "How do you feel? Kushina, have you been able to control this power?" 3rd generation, you can only master it to this extent. There is still a long way to go before you can fully master the power of the Ninetales. Kushina lowered her head and said a little frustrated. The 3rd generation didn't know how to respond when he heard this. In the eyes of the 3rd generation, isn't this something that should be worth being happy and excited about? How come looking at Kushina's expression and listening to her tone, it seems that she is extremely dissatisfied with this. Kuramakian was laughing at the side. As Kushina's best friend, she knew that Kushina's frustration was serious. Kushina's goal was to become a perfect Jinkriki as soon as possible. This little achievement was indeed not worth her being happy about. "Mr. Sandai, it's a good thing you're here." Nguyen spoke up at this time, helping the Sandai to skip this topic, and said, "We were just about to try out Kushina's power in this state, just in case something unexpected happens. Now that you're here, we have a clue." The Sandai pondered for a while, and suddenly turned to Nguyen and asked, "Nguyen, you have a mark outside the village, right?" Nguyen was delighted to hear this, and quickly replied, "Yes, Mr. Sandai." "Then let's go out of the village and try out the power of the Ninetales." The Sandai suddenly said eagerly. Mr. Sandai, the Enbu ninja who was traveling with him, was shocked and hurriedly prepared to dissuade him. However, before he could say anything, the Sandai raised his hand and said calmly, "This is also to make an accurate judgment of the power of the Ninetales. There will be no problem, don't worry." In this way, Nguyen brought Kushina and Huan, as well as the Sandai and an Anbu team, and used the Flying Thunder God technique to a large training ground outside the village, which was the place Nguyen found to practice sword escape. The training ground was circular, surrounded by tall trees. "This is my private training ground. It's not far from the village, but it's quiet enough," Nguyen explained to everyone. "Yeah, it's a great place." The 3rd generation looked around, nodded and said, "Then let the Anbu team and Kushina give it a try." After that, the 3rd generation took the lead in retreating to the edge of the training ground and stood on a tree. Nguyen and Kurama Huan looked at each other and followed suit and retreated, leaving the field to Kushina and the Anbu team. The moment Nguyen and Kurama Huan retreated, the battle began under the surprise attack of the Anbu. As the personal team around the 3rd generation, the combat effectiveness of this Anbu team is still very strong. The 4 people cooperated tacitly. A strong man with a flower face mask and a ninja with a cat face mask and a sword were entangled with Kushina in close combat, while the other 2 used ninjutsu from a distance to delay Kushina's movements, limiting Kushina's range of movement and covering the 2 people in front. It can be seen that under the sudden attack of the Anbu team, Kushina, who had a little combat experience, still panicked for a moment and was immediately at a disadvantage. However, this also aroused Kushina's competitive spirit. Kushina, who had a strong personality, took a very tough counterattack after losing the initiative. With her powerful chakra, she took the 2 attacks of the Anbu team in exchange for the initiative in the situation. Obviously, Kushina's fighting style surprised the Anbu team. They did not expect that the little girl would be so bold. Of course, the effect was still very good. Kushina successfully got the advantage of the battlefield and began to run all over the field. Without sparing the loss of chakra, she brought the advantage of the large amount of chakra to the extreme. After a while, the Anbu team was already in danger. Muen can see that this is still the result of Kushina's mercy. Otherwise, with Kushina in this state, under the full attack, any one of the Anbu team may not lose his life after taking a blow, but it is a high probability event to lose combat effectiveness. What Muen could see, the third generation could certainly see as well. The third generation nodded, came to the field in an instant, and said, "Okay, stop, there's no need to try anymore." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 119 Uchiha. Just like that, the two warring parties stopped fighting after the third Hokage stopped talking. Kushina also slowly calmed down the Ninetales chakra on her body. Kushina, very good. The third Hokage nodded, then looked at Moon and said, "Moon boy, we should go back." "Yes, third Hokage," Moon said quickly. Then, he sent everyone back to his own courtyard. The third Hokage and the Anbu team around him did not stay in Moon's courtyard for long. After telling Kushina to be careful, they left. Another Anbu team responsible for protecting Kushina also disappeared into the dark again. At this time, Muen said to Kushina, "Kushina, you just need to get familiar with this form in a short time, and don't release too much chakra." "Why?" Kushina said puzzledly. "I think I can still stay awake with one more tail. But that would be overdrawing your life." Muen said seriously, "Your body is not enough to support you to use such a powerful chakra. If it weren't for Kushina's special physique of the Uzumaki clan, ordinary people could not withstand the chakra of the three-tailed Ninetales." But Kushina was obviously not satisfied with this. After listening to Muen's words, her expression became visibly depressed. Seeing this, Muen and Kurama Huan looked at each other and turned back to the house. Kurama Huan also understood and walked to Kushina and comforted her softly. That night, Kurama Huan did not go home, but went to Kushina's house. The next morning, Kurama Huan's team agreed to the training ground. The three members of Kurama Huan's team, very rarely, came to the training ground before Kurama Huan, and prepared to train. Before the training began, Uchiha Inahori walked up to Bingzu Litong and said, "Litong, compete with me." Since the last attack, Uchiha Inahori was regarded as the weakness of the team by the enemy on the battlefield. Even after returning to the village, the proud Uchiha Inahori was still ashamed and angry. He firmly did not think that he was the weakest link in the team. Today was his battle to prove it. Bingzu Litong was also a little confused by Uchiha Inahori's challenge, but looking at the other party's eager eyes, he chose to agree. In this way, the two 9-year-old ninjas fought together on the training ground, and Inuzuka Tsumugi watched the battle boredly. The two rushed towards each other at the same time. Uchiha Inahori made seals with both hands and spurted flames from his mouth to burn Bingzu Litong. Meanwhile, Bingzu Litong drew out his training sword, dodging Uchiha Inahiro's ninjutsu attacks, while trying to get close to Uchiha Inahiro and prepare for a close fight. In fact, the difference in strength between the two sides was not big at this time. At least in the eyes of the older Inuzuka tale, the fight between the two was obviously a fight between chickens. Bingzu Litong saw that the two sides could not decide the winner for a while, and after forcing Uchiha Inahiro back with a sword, he jumped back several steps in succession, distanced himself from Uchiha Inahiro, and said, "Inahiro, how about a draw today? If we continue to fight, it will be difficult for us to decide the winner." "No, we must decide the winner today," Uchiha Inahiro said, a little annoyed. At the same time, regardless of Bingzu Litong, who was about to put away his sword, he rushed forward again. Uchiha Inahiro's move made Bingzu Litong angry, and he no longer gave in, and the two sides fought again. Inuzuka Tsume, who was standing by, saw the two of them gradually getting angry, exchanged glances with Kuramaru, rushed directly to the field, and suppressed the two of them in no time. After a long talk with Kushina all night, Kurama Kian, who was late, came to the training ground and saw this scene. "Hey, Tsume, are you teaching your little brother a lesson?" Kuramakian said with interest. Inozuka Tsume said helplessly, "Teacher, how can I have the time? But if I don't stop the two of them, something might go wrong." After that, he described the situation between the two of them to Kuramakian. Looking at the two people who were still glaring at each other, Kuramakian seemed to see a familiar scene, and said with a headache, "What's the matter, Inahori? Why do you have to decide the winner with Litang?" Uchiha Inahori fell silent for a moment. It would be fine if he won, but in this situation, he couldn't say the reason in his heart. Seeing this, Kuramahuan said, "I know it, even if you don't say it. It's the same old trick of you disciples from famous families. You must be stronger than others in strength to highlight your status as disciples of famous families, right? Inahori, listen carefully. The battle between ninjas has never been a one-on-one face-to-face fight. Even if you beat Lei Tong today, in my eyes you are still the weakest link in the team. In my team, put away your arrogance as a disciple of a famous family. If you can't cooperate well with your teammates, you will always be an unqualified ninja." Kuramahuan said sternly, "Your so-called Uchiha honor or pride will be worthless in my eyes. Little girl, you really dare to say that?" At this time, a middle-aged man with the Uchiha clan emblem on his back walked out, looked at Kuramahuan, and said in a cold voice, "The honor and pride of Uchiha were all won by the Uchiha ancestors with their strength. How can you, a little girl, slander them? Dad." At this time, Uchiha Inahori ran to the middle-aged ninja in surprise and shouted happily. The middle-aged Uchiha glared at Uchiha Inahori and said coldly, "You useless thing, you have brought shame to my Uchiha." Then, the middle-aged Uchiha's eyes turned blood red, and a pair of two Magatama Sharingan looked at Kuramakian, ready to teach Kuramakian a lesson. Kuramakian found that he had suddenly fallen into a blood-red world, and there was a blood-red eye in the sky. As a master of illusion, Kuramakian immediately knew that he was ambushed and entered into an illusion. The bloodline of the Kurama family is one of the few illusion bloodlines that can compete with the Uchiha Sharingan, and Kuramakian is the most outstanding genius of the Kurama family in the contemporary era. The illusion of the two Magatama Sharingan certainly could not trap Kuramakian, and Kuramakian broke free in an instant. Looking at the middle-aged Uchiha in front of him, whose illusion was broken and whose expression was sullen and hideous, Kuramahuan said with a cold and disdainful tone, "So this is the Uchiha, nothing more than that, The middle-aged Uchiha heard this, and was even more furious. He trembled all over. He didn't care about Uchiha Inahori beside him. He snorted coldly and turned away. That's all for today. It's about to be the plot of Hatake Tsukumo. This is a very important node in the book. I have to think clearly about how to write it. It will definitely not fall into clichés. Don't worry. Chapter 120 Muen's Ninjutsu vs Sharingan. The conflict between Kuramahuan and Uchiha Inahori's father was just a trivial matter in Kuramahuan's eyes, and it didn't even affect the team training that was going to be held later, except that Uchiha Inahori was a little absent-minded. Therefore, even at night, when he was at Muen's house, Kuramahuan didn't mention this matter to Muen. But this matter caused an uproar in the Uchiha clan. Some people believed that Kuramahuan's attitude was disrespectful to the ancestors of the Uchiha clan and needed to bear the anger of the Uchiha clan. But some people believed that Kuramahuan was just educating the members of his team and didn't really mean to target the Uchiha clan, and it was not worth the Uchiha clan's anger. Then, all these arguments were placed in front of Uchiha Fugaku, who had just taken over the position of the patriarch of the Uchiha clan. It was still evening. At Muen's house, Muen and Kuramahuan were washing rice and picking vegetables together to prepare for cooking. Suddenly, Muen frowned, but he knew that there was a guest outside the courtyard gate. In Muen's perception, the people outside did not have any hostility, but there was a hint of fighting spirit. "Huan, I suddenly have something to do, so I have to go out first. You go ahead." Muen looked at Kuramahuan and said. Kuramahuan did not doubt it either, and said casually, "Then you go. How long will it take?" "It's not a big deal. I'll be back soon, don't worry." After that, Muen left. When he came to the gate of the courtyard and saw the person coming, Muen was very surprised. Muen and Uchiha Fugaku did not have many interactions. Even when Uchiha Fugaku succeeded as the head of the Uchiha clan not long ago, Muen did not go to watch the ceremony. Muen's impression of Uchiha Fugaku was more about the first time he saw him, when he evacuated from the Rain Country during the Second Ninja World War. Compared with that time, the Uchiha at this time has a more mature face. He no longer looks like a high-spirited young man, and there seems to be a trace of insoluble sadness between his eyebrows. Of course, Fugaku was not here to fight Muen. That hint of fighting spirit was just a subconscious comparison between a genius and another genius. Muen. Uchiha Fugaku was about to say something to Muen when he was interrupted by Muen. Uchiha clan leader, no need to say, I understand everything. We can have a competition now. Muen felt the hint of fighting spirit and spoke directly. Uchiha Fugaku was slightly stunned when he heard it. Looking at Muen's serious eyes, the hint of fighting spirit instantly rose, and he also said, okay, then let's have a competition first. After hearing this, Muen formed a seal with both hands. Uchiha Fugaku also understood and put his hand on Muen's shoulder. Then the two disappeared. It was still in Muen's circular training ground. Muen used the spiritual mist at the first time. Fighting against the famous Sharingan, Muen did not dare to be careless in the slightest. At this time, Muen, due to his deepening understanding of chakra and the continuous strengthening of his control ability, can basically perform his commonly used ninjutsu without seals, or with one seal. When Muen's spiritual mist fell on Fugaku, Fugaku frowned, as if he had noticed something wrong. The three Magatama Sharingan opened instantly, but he did not find anything unusual. Muen, who was watching all this nervously, could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. It seems that the three Magatama Sharingan cannot see through the spiritual mist. However, judging from Fugaku's performance just now, the spiritual mist has no chance of deceiving the Manjuki Sharingan. After saying that, Muen made a seal again, but the thunder technique has been used. Although he is not very proficient, he can only use it reluctantly now. Oh, is this a ninjutsu that uses lightning to stimulate nerves to improve reaction speed? What a genius idea, a practical ninjutsu. Uchiha Fugaku spoke while making seals. Then, the fire dragon attacked Muen, and the two fought together. Muen, relying on the characteristics of spiritual mist, can carefully perceive the subtle movements of Fugaku's body, the flow of chakra, and even the state of mind, so as to judge Fugaku's next move, and launch an attack. The extreme observation power of the Sharingan can also perceive Muen's next move, by observing Muen's subtle movements, even the flow of chakra. Therefore, the battle between Muen and Fugaku unconsciously fell into a vicious circle. When the two's ninjutsu or actions were halfway done, they often noticed that the other party's actions were aimed at their own flaws, and they had to make changes. Muen's spiritual mist observed the enemy more carefully than the three Magatama Sharingan, and Uchiha Fugaku's fighting talent was better than Muen, and the thunder technique was indeed not very proficient, so the two sides were deadlocked and no one could do anything to each other. Gradually, the battle between the two became more and more awkward. After a while, both of them had to stop, and there was no need to continue the battle. You are really a young man. This battle with you makes me wonder if you have also opened your Sharingan, and your pupil power is even better than mine. Uchiha Fugaku spoke first. Hearing this, Muen was slightly stunned. Spiritual mist observes the opponent from the inside out, and the illusion of spiritual mist seems to really surround the power of the Magatama Sharingan. It turns out that Muen has practiced ninjutsu like Uchiha unconsciously. Muen laughed dumbly and said, I wish I was really an Uchiha. After all, it's a Sharingan. Who doesn't want to have it? Believe me, if you are an Uchiha, you won't like this pair of eyes. Sometimes, some Uchiha people would rather not have this pair of eyes. Fugaku's tone was a little bitter at first, and then he shook his head and smiled and said, if you are really an Uchiha, then my Uchiha will rise in Konoha in no time. Hearing this, Muen smiled slightly, as if he recognized Fugaku's praise for him. In his heart, he disagreed with Fugaku's words. There were many geniuses after the Uchiha clan, but the Uchiha clan did not rise. One Uchiha Shizu committed suicide to stop the rebellion of the clan. Another Uchiha Itachi, in order to stop the rebellion of the clan, wiped out the entire clan, and left only one seedling, and there was also the Uchiha Obito, who almost destroyed the whole world. How about this battle today ending in a draw? Uchiha Fugaku looked at Muen, and said with emotion, if you practiced your lightning nerve stimulation ninjutsu more proficiently, I might really lose to you today. Chapter 121 Fugaku's personality. Muen shook his head and said, the winner should be senior. Even if I practice the thunder technique to perfection, I can't beat you. Your eyes seem to show more than just this little bit of ability. Muen did vaguely feel the power hidden in Uchiha Fugaku's eyes. So, there was a hint of temptation in his words. Uchiha Fugaku was slightly stunned when he heard it, and said firmly, let's call it a draw. He didn't agree with Muen's words, but he didn't disagree either. This made Muen even more suspicious whether Uchiha Fugaku really had the pair of eyes called kaleidoscope at this time. Well, then it's a draw. Muen smiled slightly and said, however, next time you have a chance, you must let me see the hidden power under your eyes. I'm still very curious about the power of Uchiha. Uchiha Fugaku did not respond, but forced to change the subject, shook his head and said, I came to your house today to apologize, but I didn't expect to end up fighting. Muen was also stunned when he heard this, and did not ask about the eyes again. He asked in confusion, apologize? What are you apologizing for? After the last battle with Kumogakure, Muen had been brooding over the fact that he failed to kill AI with one sword. And he firmly believed that, if it was Hatake Tsukumo who drew the sword, AI would have no chance of survival. Muen attributed all this to the fact that he did not have a deep enough understanding of the power of killing and fighting, and he did not do well enough in Yindun blessing sword done. Therefore, these days, he has been carefully experiencing the power of fighting and killing. Therefore, when he sensed the faint fighting spirit in Uchiha Fugaku, he did not think much about it, and just thought that Fugaku was here to fight. Now that he thought about it, Uchiha Fugaku, who was already the head of the clan, really had no reason to specifically look for Muen to fight in the middle of the night. Muen's doubts made Uchiha Fugaku a little dazed, and he said in disbelief, you fought with me, weren't you fighting for the little girl of the Kurama family? What does this have to do with Huan? Muen said in some doubt, I just sensed a little bit of fighting spirit in the senior, and thought you were fighting me specifically, so, you don't know what happened today? Fugaku interrupted Muen and said excitedly, did anything happen during the day? Muen was confused again. Hearing this, Uchiha Fugaku sighed, smiled bitterly, and told Muen what happened during the day. After listening to this, Muen was a little stunned and said, senior, do some people in your Uchiha family have problems with their brains? This is not a big deal. Is it necessary to mobilize so many troops? Besides, Huan was just educating Uchiha Daohuo at that time. I didn't do anything excessive, right? The one who is really unreasonable is Daohuo's father. Fugaku frowned slightly when he heard Muen's slander of Uchiha, and then said helplessly, I think so too, so I'm here to apologize. It's really difficult for you to be the clan leader. Muen said with some emotion. From this incident, we can see Uchiha Fugaku's indecisive character. He has strength, but lacks iron-blooded means. He can't control the right to speak in the clan internally, and he wants to maintain the dignity and status of Uchiha externally. Hearing Muen sigh, Fugaku felt like he had found a soulmate in an instant, and the relationship between the two seemed to be much closer. Later, when the two were about to leave, Fugaku refused Muen's invitation to go back to the village together. According to him, he wanted to walk alone. Muen guessed that it was because he was under too much pressure after becoming the clan leader. When Fugaku returned to the Uchiha clan, an elder of the Uchiha clan hurried to Fugaku's house, looked at the young clan leader hopefully, and said, how is it, Fugaku? Many Uchiha clan members knew that the young clan leader had gone to find the girl who slandered the Uchiha clan, hoping that Fugaku could seek justice for the Uchiha clan. I had a fight with Muen. Seeing the elder's eyes glowing with gold, Uchiha Fugaku shook his head and continued, but I didn't win. Seeing the elder's gloomy and unbelievable expression, Fugaku shook his head and said, but I didn't lose either. It was a draw. Is Muen so strong? Elder Uchiha felt a little better after hearing this, but still said in disbelief, then we can only swallow our anger. Can't we Uchiha do anything to a little girl? Then, the elder Uchiha left in a state of dismay. Seeing this, Fugaku just shook his head and said nothing. In this way, Uchiha Fugaku did not express his attitude in the face of different voices in the clan. Instead, he used Muen's strength to forcibly suppress the dissent in the clan. Although this method maintained his image as a good man in the hearts of the clan members, it would also inevitably exacerbate the rift between the village and the Uchiha clan. On the other hand, after Muen returned home, he did not mention the battle with Uchiha Fugaku to Kurama Huan, but then said, "Huan, when I just came back, I happened to meet the head of the Fugaku clan. He also apologized to you on behalf of Inahori's father." Kurama Huan was slightly stunned, and then he remembered what happened in the morning, and said casually, "What is there to apologize for? Although that uncle is hateful, he didn't do anything to me." Well, he also said that Inahori will have to rely on you in the future. Muen said again, "Isn't this certain? I will definitely educate my team members well." Kurama Huan said. Kurama Huan did not stay at Muen's house for long, and returned to his own home early. Otherwise, Kurama Huan might really get angry. After Kurama Huan left, Muen's heart surged. Whether it is the spiritualization technique, the blood power of the Kurama clan, or the manifestation of intangible things such as fighting spirit and killing intention, and the blessing of sword escape, they are all within the scope of the power of yin escape, but these cannot represent the whole of yin escape. The only thing that can fully represent yin escape should be the Sharingan of the Uchiha clan. Therefore, Muen has always had the idea of studying the Sharingan in his subconscious mind. And fighting with the Uchiha clan is the simplest and most direct way. This is the most fundamental reason why Muen and Fuyu will fight, because Muen has been looking forward to such a battle in his subconscious mind. Therefore, when he saw Uchiha Fuyu who was full of fighting spirit, Muen did not hesitate to regard Uchiha Fuyu as a fighting opponent. Of course, the battle with Fuyu did achieve the ideal effect. At least Muen's understanding of yin escape has reached a higher level. Shenyun Jutsu can also go further with the help of Sharingan. Chapter 122 Rumors. It is not to say that after a short battle with Uchiha Fugaku, Muen has thoroughly studied the Magatama Sharingan. This is impossible. After all, the Sharingan is inherited from the Sage's Eye of the Six Paths Sage, and the difficulty of research is not ordinary. Muen's research on the Sharingan has just begun. However, this battle is like a key that truly opens the door to the study of Yindan. Before the battle with Uchiha Fugaku, Muen's research on Yindan was fragmented. Spiritualization technique, Kurama bloodline, and will manifestation are all Yindan, but they are different. However, after a brief contact with the Sharingan, Muen saw the possibility of connecting the fragmented Yindan into one piece, which put Muen's research on Yindan on the right track. Time passed slowly, and in the blink of an eye, more than half a year had passed. The local conflicts around Konoha have been intensifying, and the casualties of Konoha's ninjas are also getting higher and higher. Even Kurama Huan, Hinata Akazuki and Inuzuka Shida have been in danger of death several times. Fortunately, Muen's Flying Thunder God technique is special. Every time in a critical moment, Muen can come down from the sky and resolve the danger. This day, Muen was patrolling in the hospital, thinking about the new secret technique that has been gradually improved and perfected. He was a little excited. At this time, the whispering chat of two young nurses nearby caught Muen's attention. A long-haired round-faced young nurse muttered, "Have you heard? That Hatake Tsukumo didn't complete the mission and escaped from the battlefield. It's incredible. That's Hatake Tsukumo. Didn't they say that the mission failed because they had to rescue their teammates?" The short-haired crescent-faced young nurse next to him said in confusion. "No, it said outside that if they continue to complete the mission, they will have to face very powerful enemies. So, Hatake Tsukumo used the excuse of rescuing his companions to escape the mission." The long-haired round-faced young nurse directly refuted. It seemed as if she was at the scene at the time. The short-haired crescent-faced nurse looked at her companion helplessly and said, "Don't believe everything you hear. We can't talk about the things between these big shots. It's not just me who is talking about it. The whole village is talking about it." The long-haired round-faced nurse retorted with dissatisfaction. At this time, Muen coughed lightly, and the two girls realized that Muen was not far away. The two were frightened and bowed quickly, and said nervously, "Dean Muen." Okay, don't be so nervous. Nguyen said softly, looking at the long-haired round-faced nurse. What you said just now is true. Has the failure of Hatake Tsukumo's mission really reached the point where the whole village is discussing it? Apart from work, Nguyen rarely communicates with other doctors and nurses in the hospital. The main reason is that his brain is always in a state of thinking, and he doesn't have much time to spend on daily socializing. Therefore, everyone in the hospital thinks that Nguyen is a serious and strict person. The long-haired round-faced nurse was so nervous that she almost cried. She said tremblingly, yes, Dean. Now the whole village is saying that Hatake Tsukumo has failed in his mission. Nguyen frowned when he heard this and was a little confused. Logically, because of his arrival, the direction of many things in Konoha should have changed. But now the suicide of Hatake Tsukumo has not been affected at all and has arrived as expected. In fact, Nguyen has always remembered the suicide of Hatake Tsukumo in his heart. According to Nguyen's understanding of Hatake Tsukumo is definitely not a person with a weak heart. Committing suicide because he couldn't stand the village's gossip? This is definitely not something that the Hatake Tsukumo that Nguyen knows can do. However, now that things have come to this point, will Hatake Tsukumo still end up committing suicide like in the original comics? Who is the person behind this? The disabled Danzo, or the third generation? Nguyen shook his head and stopped thinking about it. Now I think about it, but I can't figure it out, even if I rack my brains. It seems that I have to go there in person tonight. At this time, Nguyen found that the two little girls were lowering their heads, picking their nails, and standing nervously by the side, so he waved his hand and said, "Go and get busy. Don't spread these specious rumors in the hospital in the future." "Okay, Dean." The two seemed to breathe a sigh of relief and ran away quickly. "It's all because of you. If you hadn't told me these things, we would have been stopped by the Dean. I didn't know I would meet the Dean, but the Dean is really scary. I will never talk nonsense again in the future." The voices of the two little nurses in the distance faintly came into Nguyen's ears. Nguyen shook his head and didn't care too much. Since knowing about Hatake Tsukumo, Nguyen no longer had that kind of passion for the improvement and development of the secret technique. Now all he wanted was to hurry to the evening to meet Hatake Tsukumo. In the evening, when he finally got off work, Nguyen couldn't wait to leave the hospital. Walking on the streets of Konoha, he did find many people talking about Hatake Tsukumo. "Have you heard? The two ninjas rescued by Hatake Tsukumo are criticizing Hatake Tsukumo, saying that Hatake Tsukumo is a coward, afraid of death, and caused the failure of their mission." No way. Even the teammates he rescued blame him. So it seems that Hatake Tsukumo is really a villain. I used to admire him so much and thought he was a hero. Hatake Tsukumo is a great hero of the Second Ninja World War. How could he be the kind of person you said? It must be slander. Zaozi, you don't understand this. This person will change. There is no need to look for it deliberately. The streets and alleys are full of discussions. Overall, most people have a critical attitude towards Hatake Tsukumo, and only a small number of people are more rational, thinking that Hatake Tsukumo is not a coward and is not affected by the messages, but their arguments have disappeared in the rumors. Nguyen came to the door of Hatake Tsukumo's house with a solemn expression and found that the door was actually engraved with big words such as afraid of death, deserting in the face of danger, and unworthy of being a hero. Although Nguyen was angry, he was in no mood to care about these things. He knocked on the door first, but no one responded after a long time. He wanted to push the door open, but found that the door seemed to be locked from the inside. Nguyen walked around the door a few times, and after calming down, he found that there seemed to be several groups of people watching him. He shook his head and turned away. Chapter 123 Nguyen's Parents. It was midnight, and Hatake Tsukumo was sitting in the courtyard, looking at the moon in the sky, enjoying the quiet moment. Suddenly, a figure came over the wall. Hatake Tsukumo didn't look at the person, as if he already knew who the person was. He greeted him in a relaxed tone. "You're here? Senior Tsukumo knew I was coming." Nguyen looked at the middle-aged man in front of him, who looked clear-headed and not at all decadent. It was totally unimaginable that Hatake Tsukumo would commit suicide because of rumors in the village. "If you don't come, you won't be yourself." Hatake Tsukumo shook his head and then said, "You are just like your parents, both warm-hearted people. If you are a good person, you will definitely come to see me at this time." When Senior Tsukumo taught me the secret art of sword escape, he said that he and my parents were of the same kind. "I wonder how you know my parents?" Muen recalled the scene when Tsukumo taught him the secret art of sword escape late at night and said with some confusion, "Moreover, over the years, Senior seems to have deliberately kept a distance from me." Hatake Tsukumo heard this, shook his head and smiled, and said, "I do have the idea of keeping a distance from you, but I don't want you to be implicated by my affairs in the future, but I can't say how much effect it will have now. However, even if you are implicated now, it should not have any impact on you." Hatake Tsukumo looked at Muen, nodded with satisfaction, and said, "Your growth is indeed amazing. You don't know how shocked I was when I saw the platinum dragon in the sky of Konoha." Senior Tsukumo, you are joking. My achievements in swordsmanship are still far inferior to yours. Muen shook his head and said, "Although Muen has cultivated the sword escape bloodline, and Hatake Tsukumo has not, Hatake Tsukumo's swordsmanship with a short sword is more fierce than Muen. Hatake Tsukumo has been practicing swordsmanship for many years. Whether it is sword intent or killing intent, it is not comparable to Muen. And using yin escape to manifest will and bless swordsmanship has become Hatake Tsukumo's instinct. Every ninja has his own way of fighting. Why do you belittle yourself?" Hatake Tsukumo shook his head and said, "I wonder how much impression you still have of your parents? There should be very little. After all, you were still young at that time, and it has been almost 10 years. Hatake Tsukumo's eyes showed a look of reminiscence, and he said with emotion, "If an ordinary child loses his parents at the age of 6, after 10 years, the impression of his parents will inevitably decrease until there is no picture. But Muen is different. He has wisdom since birth. Therefore, Muen's impression of his parents in the ninja world has not decreased much. His parents' love for him has always been an important force supporting him to live in this world. However, Muen often hates his precocity. Because the reason why his parents went out to perform missions together before he grew up was because they thought that the young Muen could live independently. Muen sometimes still wonders if he is not so precocious, his parents will not leave him alone without hesitation and both go out of the village to perform missions and will not sacrifice together in the mission. In that case, at least one of his parents will be with him. However, every time he thinks about this, Muen feels that he is very selfish. Because he understands that with the degree of love between his parents, it is much happier for them to die together than to die and live alone. Hatake Tsukumo began to slowly tell the story between him and Muen's parents. The appearance of Muen's parents in Hatake Tsukumo's mouth gradually merged with the appearance in Muen's memory. Muen's father is named Mukyu, a cheerful and gentle man. His mother is named Zayazi, a warm and sunny girl. Both of them came from civilian families and had no ninjutsu inheritance, but both of them were optimistic and had good qualifications. Hatake Tsukumo met Mukyu and Zayazi during a mission. Hatake Tsukumo, who was born in a small family, was naturally prejudiced against ninjas from civilian families like other family members, thinking that they were weak and were the weakness of the team. Therefore, they always targeted the two in the mission, but the two did not blame Hatake Tsukumo, but regarded Hatake Tsukumo as an ignorant brother, and saved Hatake Tsukumo in danger at the critical moment. This is the story of Hatake Tsukumo and Muen's parents, when they first met. At that time, I was very grateful to your parents, so I thought I had to repay them anyway. Hatake Tsukumo continued, I secretly brought out the ninjutsu scrolls in the family's secret room and wanted to practice with them. Oh, this is a reason why my parents were able to be promoted to Chunin. Muen said with some realization. Not really, your parents refused. They said they saved me not for those ninjutsu. And the village has already given merit, and accepting those ninjutsu would be like receiving 2 rewards for 1 merit. Hatake Tsukumo shook his head and said, but I know they just don't want me to be punished by the family. At that time, stealing family ninjutsu was a very serious incident. Once discovered, the consequences would be disastrous. Your parents' ninjutsu were all earned through military merit, or captured on the battlefield. Hatake Tsukumo looked at Muen and said seriously, moreover, your parents are definitely geniuses, not inferior to your genius. If they were also born into a family of ninjas, they should be famous ninjas now. Seeing Muen's unconvincing look, Hatake Tsukumo snorted and said, you know sword escape. The success of this secret technique is the credit of your parents. Seeing that Muen finally showed surprise, Hatake Tsukumo said with a little pride, this secret technique was perfected by your parents for me. It's a pity that neither of them has the attributes of thunder and earth. That's why you taught me sword escape. Muen nodded and said with some sudden enlightenment. However, you showed the secret technique to my parents. Was there no problem at the time? Muen said with some doubt. What's the problem? This is not a mature ninjutsu. At that time, almost everyone in the Hatake family had a scroll, and no one could master this thing. Even if it was made by accident, it could not form combat effectiveness. Hatake Tsukumo said disapprovingly, the clan is so happy that they can't find a stable way to extract this chakra. Just like that, during the war, the friendship between Hatake Tsukumo and Muen's parents became deeper and deeper. I should be able to write a clear story about Hatake Tsukumo tomorrow. It should be different from all the other Naruto fanfiction. At least I haven't seen it yet. Chapter 124 The Truth of Everything. After listening to Hatake Tsukumo's story, Muen realized another side of his parents, and the image of his parents in his mind became more three-dimensional. It seems that, even though my parents are gone, I still unknowingly received their kindness. Aunt Iruna is like this, and so is senior Hatake Tsukumo. Listening to Hatake Tsukumo's memories, Muen couldn't help but think in his heart. Seeing Hatake Tsukumo lost in his memories, Muen couldn't bear to interrupt him. But when he thought of the purpose of coming here tonight, he still said, Senior Tsukumo, what mission are you carrying out this time? Why are there so many rumors in the village? Hatake Tsukumo, whose memories were interrupted, looked at Muen unhappily, shook his head slightly and said, it's not an important mission, and strictly speaking, the development of the whole incident has nothing to do with the mission. Hearing this, Muen frowned and said puzzledly, it has nothing to do with the mission? The failure of the mission is just a trigger. Hatake Tsukumo seemed to be a little melancholy at this time. He sighed and continued, where should I start? Yes, I still have to start from your parents. This matter is related to my parents? Muen was surprised. His parents had been dead for almost 10 years. Muen couldn't figure out how this matter could involve his parents. Hatake Tsukumo nodded, fell into his memories again, and began to tell Muen the whole story. Muen's father, Muqiu, was a sunny and cheerful young man with his own ideals. He believed that it was wrong for ninjas to divide into different camps, based on different villages and to create barriers between each other, based on different bloodlines and surnames, which was the main cause of the war. He often said that ninjas should understand and help each other, and only in this way can the war be eliminated. His idea was immediately supported by Muen's mother, Xiaozi. The two thought so and did so. They were sunny and cheerful, constantly helping the weak, and infecting other ninjas with practical actions. Especially after they became Chunin, a considerable force gradually gathered around them, and Hatake Tsukumo became one of them at that time. Most of these people were born as civilians or ninjas from small families. Everyone helped each other, and adhered to the common belief in the cruel war. This small group miraculously grew stronger. At that time, our mutual aid association was the purest time. Hatake Tsukumo said with some emotion, it's a pity that it's not possible now. Hearing this, Muen had an incredible feeling. He never thought that his parents were still such a pair of idealists, and it seemed that they had made a career. What happened later? Muen saw that Hatake Tsukumo frowned, as if he had thought of something bad, and asked hurriedly, later, your parents got married, and then you were born. Hatake Tsukumo said unhappily. But what does this have to do with what's happening in the village now? Muen asked in confusion. Of course it has something to do with it, just listen slowly. Hatake Tsukumo said unhappily. After Muqiu and Xiaozi got married and had children, the development of the Mutual Aid Association did not stop, but continued to grow and develop. Of course, for the upper class in the village, this was just a small organization with a few chunin, and it was not a powerful force, so the village did not care too much. But when Muen's parents both died in the battle, the Mutual Aid Association lost its leader in an instant, and its development stagnated, and it even quickly split into several small groups. This was the first split of the Mutual Aid Association. Later, as Hatake Tsukumo became a Jonin with his powerful swordsmanship, this split situation changed again, and they all unconsciously gathered around Hatake Tsukumo. Senior, I didn't expect that you are a lord who controls a certain power in Konoha. Muen was stunned and couldn't help, but said in a teasing tone, I can kill people with a knife, but I can't manage so many people. Hatake Tsukumo said helplessly, I don't have the personality charm of your father, nor do I have any good management methods. In most cases, I'm just a banner for everyone to gather together for warmth. The most important thing is that the Mutual Aid Association seems to have been reunited. But I know that small groups have been formed inside, and barriers have been created. How can it be so easy to disappear again? I still don't understand. What does this have to do with your slander? Muen couldn't help but ask. Hatake Tsukumo didn't rush to answer Muen's question this time, but looked at the sky and said, an extremely terrible idea has appeared inside the Mutual Aid Association, and this idea has affected many people. As Hatake Tsukumo told the story, Muen finally understood what was going on. It turned out that during the Second Ninja World War, Hatake Tsukumo was ordered to delay the time for the Sand Village, to reinforce the Rain Country. The combat method of Hatake Tsukumo at that time was to assassinate the daimyo of Wind Country, to force Sand Village not to act rashly. This was something Hatake Tsukumo had to do in order to complete the mission, but with the spread of the news by the ninjas in the same team after the war, this matter attracted the attention of a large number of people in the Mutual Aid Association, and a terrible trend of thought began to emerge. Hatake Tsukumo's assassination of the daimyo broke the mythical status of the daimyo, and there were already a group of people in the Mutual Aid Association who were open-minded, and not bound by tradition. They began to think that the daimyo was just like that, and it was unwise for ninjas to fight for the daimyo. They believed that, in order to end the war, they had to bring down the daimyo first. This idea also caused an uproar within the Mutual Aid Association, and soon it was divided into two factions. Some people agreed with this idea, while others thought it was unreasonable. The two sides argued endlessly and soon became enemies. The second split of the Mutual Aid Association was just around the corner. At this time, it was Hatake Tsukumo who stood up and suppressed both sides with his strength, and strictly ordered that the matter should not be discussed internally. However, the Mutual Aid Association was originally a very loose group. At the beginning, everyone obeyed Hatake Tsukumo's orders, but as time went on, everyone began to argue unconsciously again. This time the argument was not as lucky as the last time, and soon the news reached the ears of the Konoha high-level officials. This also caused an uproar among the Konoha high-level officials. The angry Konoha high-level officials soon issued an order to Hatake Tsukumo, requiring Hatake Tsukumo to hand over the list of ninjas in the Mutual Aid Association who agreed with this idea. What does the village want the list for? Muen said with some confusion. Hatake Tsukumo shook his head and said, what else could it be? Of course, we will purge according to the list. Muen was shocked when he heard this and said, how is this possible? Will the village kill so many compatriots because of this? It seems that you don't know much about the village. Hatake Tsukumo shook his head and said, Muen, which family or clan do you think is the strongest in the village? Without waiting for Muen to answer, Hatake Tsukumo continued, is it the Senju? Is it the Uchiha? Or is it the Hyuga, Sarutobi? None of these, the most powerful in the village, are the ninjas of the daimyo. The Utane family, the Mitaman family, the Shimura family, and the Sarutobi family are all diehard supporters of the daimyo, and the Inuzuka family and the Inoshikacho family are also supporters of the daimyo. Why do you think Danzo is still alive after the Root incident? Not to mention the Shimura clan, the Utatane and Mitaman families would not allow the third Hokage to deal with Danzo. Even within the Sarutobi clan, there are a group of people who would not agree, because the four clans have always been the most solid allies. At the beginning, Utatane Koharu, Mitaman N, Shimura Danzo, Sarutobi Hiruzen, etc. were the guards of the second Hokage. Were they really just guards? The second Hokage is so strong, how could he need so many guards? It was more of a surveillance of the second Hokage. Looking at Muen, who was a little shocked, Hatake Tsukumo continued, any family's strength and power, as long as it has the potential to threaten the daimyo's power in Konoha, then this family will definitely decline. After the death of the first Hokage, the second Hokage Tobirama Senju inherited the position of Hokage, which caused dissatisfaction among the daimyo's followers. They thought that the Senju should not hold the position of Hokage like this, but the second Hokage's prestige was too high, and they had no choice but to obey. But if the open approach doesn't work, we can try the covert approach. The geniuses of the Senju family died one after another accidentally, wasn't that their method? Fortunately, the second generation woke up early and disbanded the family as soon as possible, which in turn won a glimmer of hope for the family. If nothing unexpected happens, the next family will be the Uchiha. The daimyo's followers are extremely vigilant about the two families that founded the village. If they continue to be mediocre, it will be fine. Once a genius leader appears, it will be the beginning of the Uchiha's demise. Is the village so dark? Muen had heard many die-hard Naruto fans analyze the darkness of the village in his previous life, and this time he really saw it. Seeing Muen's stunned look, Hatake Tsukumo released another bomb, knocking Muen unconscious. He said calmly, why do you think the second generation died? He was proficient in the Flying Thunder God technique, so it should be no problem for him to escape alone, no matter how seriously injured he was. However, he couldn't, because once he abandoned the elite guards and returned to the village alone, the Senju clan would really be doomed. You see, even the second generation had no way to deal with this force in the village and could only compromise step by step. Now you know, for the upper echelons of the village, any factors that are unfavorable to the daimyo will be eliminated without hesitation, at least for now. Hatake Tsukumo said a little coldly. After a long time, Muen came back to his senses. Although he already knew what Hatake Tsukumo had done, he still couldn't help but ask, so what are you going to do? Hatake Tsukumo fell silent for an instant and said, the village is forcing me to make a choice. As long as I hand over the list, the people on the list will be captured and killed by the village tomorrow on charges of spreading rumors and bullying the jonin. How can I send these comrades to death with my own hands? Hatake Tsukumo said in a small but extremely firm voice, I will take this list to hell. Muen got the expected result, but still couldn't help but retort, but even so, the village can't find these people. The organization of the Mutual Aid Association is not very strict. It won't be difficult to find them out. You don't understand this. The Mutual Aid Association is divided into many small groups, and I'm the only one with the complete list. Hatake Tsukumo smiled and said, although the village can find out part of it through a thorough investigation, it will definitely make the village a mess. With the unstable external situation now, the top leaders dare not do this. Hatake Tsukumo looked at Muen with a frown on his face and said with a smile, don't be sad for me. Over the years, I've already let it go. Death is the fate of every ninja. I think it's a worthy death to die for so many fellow ninjas. I still think the village won't let it go. You can only protect them for a while, not forever. Muen looked at Hatake Tsukumo and retorted, when the village has time, they will still be cleansed. That's fate. Hatake Tsukumo shook his head and said, I've already passed the order. After I die, the Mutual Aid Association will be disbanded. Whether you can survive depends on your luck. Is there no other way? Muen couldn't help asking. There's no other way. As long as I'm alive, the village will always find a way to find the list. Hatake Tsukumo said seriously, don't underestimate the village's strength and means. After tonight, I guess it won't be possible for me to die, even if I want to. Then what about Kakashi? Muen made a final effort and dissuaded, by the way, where's Kakashi? Haha, the kid is still on a mission outside the village. Hatake Tsukumo was still very proud of his own child, but then he said calmly, he's already a ninja and can live independently. I don't know how Kakashi would feel when he knew that Hatake Tsukumo finally admitted that he had grown up and was no longer a child. And there is one most important point. Seeing that Muen was still trying to persuade him, Hatake Tsukumo waved his hand and continued, I agree with that idea. What is the daimyo? Why should we ninjas fight to the death for his benefit? Seeing that Muen finally stopped persuading him, Hatake Tsukumo sighed and said, the matter started with my assassination of the daimyo of the Wind Country, so let's send it from me. Muen looked at Hatake Tsukumo, who was ready to die generously, and suddenly thought of something, and said with golden eyes, since you are determined to die, why not cooperate with me in an experiment? How about it? Chapter 125, The Fate of Hatake Tsukumo. Upon hearing this, Hatake Tsukumo couldn't help but laugh, and said generously, it seems that before I leave, I can still make use of my remaining energy. Tell me, what do you need me to do? Muen looked at Hatake Tsukumo and smiled, and said, Senior, you will know in a while. Muen took out a sealing scroll, took out a white zetsu from it, and then began to use special chakra to carve ritual runes on the body of white zetsu. The runes finally formed a circular mark on the forehead of white zetsu. At this time, white zetsu's consciousness had long been extracted by Muen, and he was just a plant white zetsu without consciousness. And these ritual runes can transform the energy of white zetsu's body into spiritual chakra. The moment Hatake Tsukumo saw white zetsu, he frowned. After Muen finished his work, he said in a deep voice, what is this thing? Are you doing human experiments? What are you thinking, Senior? How could I risk the world's condemnation and do taboo research? Muen shook his head and chuckled, and said, this is a prisoner I captured when I was on a mission. This thing can only be considered half a person at most. This thing has no other advantages, but it has extremely strong vitality. Seeing Hatake Tsukumo looking at him with a puzzled look, Muen continued, he should have some cells of the first Hokage, Senju Hashirama. My master, Katodan, and his wife went out of the village because of this thing. The first generation cells, how is this possible? Hatake Tsukumo looked at Muen and said in shock, it seems that the ninja world is really in a turbulent time now. All kinds of monsters have come out. Then what experiment do you want me to do to turn me into this ghost appearance? Then I will regret it. I will never agree to it. Hatake Tsukumo took 2 steps back and waved his hands quickly. What are you thinking, Senior? Even if I want to turn you into this, I don't have the ability to do it. Muen said with a smile. Seeing that Hatake Tsukumo was still full of doubts, Muen had to continue to explain, a long time ago, I studied a ninjutsu, reincarnation technique. Now it is theoretically feasible, but I have never had the opportunity to practice it. Now that the senior has made up his mind to die, why not try this ninjutsu? Muen paused for a while, and then said, if this technique succeeds, then the senior will have to temporarily hide his identity and live in the dark. After listening to Muen's explanation, Hatake Tsukumo stood there for a long time, and then sighed and said, is there such a ninjutsu in this world? It's really unimaginable. Then let's start. If you can really fake your death and get away like this, it will be a good result. Hatake Tsukumo said impatiently. After all, who doesn't want to have a chance to survive? Muen nodded, made seals with both hands, stretched out his right hand, and a spiritual light came out of his hand, which was the ninjutsu spirit hand activated. Senior, don't resist. Muen instructed Hatake Tsukumo, while pressing his right hand on Hatake Tsukumo's forehead. Then he grabbed with his right hand, and the spirit like Hatake Tsukumo was caught by Muen. Hatake Tsukumo's spirit was as solid as his real body, which means that Hatake Tsukumo's chakra is extraordinary. Muen could only think with emotion, he is worthy of being a cage-level strongman. The spirit Hatake Tsukumo spread his hands, and looked at his spirit-like self, with a curious look on his face. He looked at Muen and said, are you helping me use the spiritual transformation technique? You can say that. Muen nodded in response. Then, Muen took a deep breath again, and formed seals with his hands. Then, one hand was pressed on the circular mark on Beizetsu's forehead, and the other hand was pressed on the spirit-like Hatake Tsukumo's forehead. The circular mark on the forehead of white Zetsu emitted a spiritual light, and then the light was automatically bound into a ray of light, and connected to the center of the eyebrows of the spirit Hatake Tsukumo, and then the spirit Hatake Tsukumo followed the light, and sank into the circular mark on the forehead of white Zetsu. When the spirit Hatake Tsukumo completely entered the circular mark on the forehead of white Zetsu, the chakra runes centered on the circular mark on the forehead of white Zetsu all emitted a hazy spiritual light, and then the spiritual light slowly gathered on the circular mark on the forehead. Then, a stronger spiritual light emerged from the circular mark and spread to the whole body. Nguyen watched all this nervously. The spiritual light on White Zetsu lasted for nearly half an hour. Just when Nguyen thought that the ninjutsu might fail, the spiritual light on White Zetsu dissipated. At this time, White Zetsu's figure and appearance had completely changed. The originally pure white skin had become the appearance of an ordinary yellow person, and the hair color was silver white, just like Hatake Tsukumo. After performing the symbiosis technique for Inuzuka Shida and the prince, Nguyen came up with the idea of transforming the symbiosis technique into the reincarnation technique. In the research, Nguyen found that, in order to successfully reincarnate, 2 points must be achieved. The first point is to perfectly remove the spirit body. After Nguyen obtained the sealing technique inheritance of the Uzumaki family, and watched and studied the Shiki seal, the ninjutsu spirit hand was further improved and perfected, and removing the spirit body was no longer a problem. The second point is to find a completely compatible body. There are also 2 methods for this. The first is to use the cloning technique to cultivate a body that is completely compatible with the spirit body based on the cells of the main body. The second is to transform the reincarnated body with the chakra of the spirit body. This again requires facing 2 problems. The first problem is that the chakra of the spirit body is used a little less, and the total amount is limited after all. It is absolutely not enough to completely transform the reincarnated body. The second problem is that the general reincarnated body will collapse first in the face of the violent transformation of the spirit body chakra. When Nguyen was studying the reincarnation technique, he also referred to similar ninjutsu, or Orochimaru's reincarnation without corpse, to solve these 2 problems, but found that it was completely unsuitable for his reincarnation technique. Orochimaru's reincarnation without corpse method to solve the first problem is to seal a part of his spirit, equivalent to a spirit clone, on the body of the reincarnated body in the form of a curse seal, and use the curse seal to guide natural energy to slowly transform the reincarnated body. If the reincarnated body can finally fully withstand the transformation of the curse seal, it means that this body is strong enough to withstand the reincarnation of Orochimaru. If it cannot withstand the transformation of the curse seal, it means that this body cannot withstand the reincarnation of Orochimaru, which is a disguised screening of the reincarnated body and solves the second problem. Nguyen's solution to the first problem is to convert the body energy of the reincarnated body into spiritual chakra for the spirit to absorb, so as to make up for the consumption of the spirit, to transform the reincarnated body. As for the second problem, Nguyen thinks that White Zetsu is the best answer besides the clone body. Hatake Tsukumo sat up blankly and looked at his hands. It was a familiar feeling, no different from his original body. Then Hatake Tsukumo looked to the side with a strange expression, only to see his original body lying there. Although the breath of life was still there, it was completely impossible for it to wake up again. Hatake Senior, how do you feel? Nguyen asked nervously. After all, it was the first time to perform this ninjutsu, and he was still a little nervous, fearing that there would be some accidents in the middle. Hatake Tsukumo did not speak, but stood up, first closed his eyes to feel this new body, and then practiced some punches and kicks in the yard. Half a quarter of an hour later, Hatake Tsukumo looked at Nguyen excitedly and said in surprise, "Very good. Why do I feel that the physique of my current body is stronger than the physique of my previous body?" Nguyen nodded and said, "It may be because this reincarnated body has Hashirama cells. After all, Hashirama cells can provide strong vitality." Seeing Hatake Tsukumo's successful reincarnation, Nguyen knew that using White Zetsu as the reincarnated body was indeed a perfect choice. It seems that I must capture more White Zetsu if I have the chance in the future. This is the best prop for the reincarnation technique. Nguyen looked at Hatake Tsukumo and thought to himself. At this time, Hatake Tsukumo's excitement had gradually calmed down. He looked at Nguyen, who was in a trance, with a strange look on his face, showing hesitation and struggle. After a while, he seemed to have made up his mind, and said to Nguyen with a serious expression, "Wait for me here for a while, don't leave yet." After that, without waiting for Nguyen's response, he turned and went into the house. After a while, Hatake Tsukumo came to the courtyard again, and handed a scroll to Nguyen. Looking at Muen's puzzled expression, he said seriously, "This is the list of all the members of the Mutual Aid Association, as well as some relevant introductions of these people, and some contact codes. After you fully master it, you will be the new leader of the Mutual Aid Association. What do you want to give these to me, senior?" Muen looked at the scroll in his hand, and said with some doubt, "Just like you said, once the war is over, and the village is free, they will eventually die." Hatake Tsukumo said with emotion, "I didn't have any good ideas before. I could only leave it to fate and see their personal luck. But now I think maybe you can lead them to survive." Hatake Tsukumo's eyes shone brightly, staring at Muen expectantly. Muen was stunned, looking at Hatake Tsukumo and said, "Senior, are you entrusting these people to me? What you can't do yourself, do you think I can do it? I don't think I have this ability at all." Hatake Tsukumo knew what Muen said. However, after seeing Muen perform such a magical ninjutsu tonight, Hatake Tsukumo had a hunch that, if there was a chance, then the opportunity would definitely appear on the boy in front of him. "Yeah, what else can you do?" The light in Hatake Tsukumo's eyes dimmed a little, and he said a little embarrassedly, "I'm not forcing you. If you think it's troublesome, just destroy this scroll. Just don't hand it over to the village." Hey, the Mutual Aid Association is the continuation of MUQIU's ideals. I didn't expect it to be destroyed in an instant. Hatake Tsukumo seemed to be muttering to himself, but his voice just happened to reach Muen's ears. Muen knew that these words were specifically said to him. "Senior really gave me a big problem." Muen had a complicated expression and said with some emotion, "I will think about it carefully. If I decide to participate, I will open the scroll. If I decide not to participate, I will not look at this scroll, but will directly destroy it." "Okay." Hatake Tsukumo nodded and agreed. "What are your plans for the future, Senior Tsukumo?" Muen looked at Hatake Tsukumo and asked casually. "I don't know yet. Maybe I'll go around a bit first." Hatake Tsukumo looked up at the sky and said with some sadness, "I'll have to wander around in the future." Muen thought for a while, took out a token from his arms, with the words Waven Knight engraved on both sides of the token, handed it to Hatake Tsukumo, and said, "Senior, if you have wandered around enough, take this token to the Kingdom of Waves. When the time comes, with this token and my name, you can meet the name of the Kingdom of Waves, and ask for a place to stay. You know I don't have a good impression of the names of the 5 major countries, but now you want me to find a name of a small country?" Hatake Tsukumo looked at Muen with a strange expression, and said with a smile. Although he said this, Hatake Tsukumo still took the token from Muen. Muen was also happy when he heard this, and said, "This is a boy about my age. If he hasn't changed too much, he should be a little different from other Daimyo." Hatake Tsukumo nodded and said perfunctorily, "I know, I will go and see him when I have the chance." So far, Muen's purpose of meeting Hatake Tsukumo tonight has been fully achieved. Seeing that it was getting late and the night was about to pass, Muen took the opportunity to bid farewell to Hatake Tsukumo, and Hatake Tsukumo did not try to keep him. Seeing Muen's leaving back, Hatake Tsukumo looked strange, shook his head and laughed, and said to himself, "Everything tonight is within your expectations, right? What an interesting boy." After that, Hatake Tsukumo looked at every corner inside and outside the house, and said his final goodbye to this house. Then, Hatake Tsukumo shattered the heart of his original body with chakra, pretending to commit suicide. After taking a last look at the house behind him, Hatake Tsukumo put on the spare short knife on his back, and turned away without hesitation. Muen was on a rooftop a little further away, watching Hatake Tsukumo's figure going farther and farther away. Regardless of whether he could see it or not, he waved to him as a farewell. Only when Hatake Tsukumo's figure completely disappeared, did Muen reluctantly retract his gaze. Muen understood that he didn't know when he would see this old friend of his parents again. Afterwards, Muen quietly lifted the illusions cast on several nearby ninja teams that were monitoring. As Muen's research on Yundan deepened, his attainments in illusions also rose. These ninjas were actually unaware of the fact that they were under illusion. The next day, a shocking event spread throughout Konoha. Hatake Tsukumo, an elite jonin and half-sleeve wearer, could not bear the rumors in the village and chose to end his life. "Starting tomorrow, I will work hard!" Exclamation mark. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.